Check mic 1, 2. All right. Welcome everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This time we'll do a pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time we'll take a moment of silence for prayer. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. All right. Welcome those that are coming in. I know the traffic's bad, and we have a few elected officials that are letting us know that they're on their way. We'd like to welcome you all, the public first off, and all the elected officials and all the governing bodies of Lafayette Parish. We thank you so much for being here this evening, and we'd like to welcome everyone as tonight we're going to give you a brief overview of our Lafayette Parish Consolidated Government Parish budget, and let you see exactly what we're dealing with and how it affects everyone in the room, from the public down to the municipalities and for LCG and the city of Lafayette. So we thank you for coming, we thank you for attending, and there will be a portion tonight where we will definitely ask your suggestions or your thoughts or ideas on how do we overcome this deficit that we're facing, so we can pull together as a community and try to solve these issues before it gets to the point that there's no turning back. It'll be very tough to overcome if we don't do anything. So thank you again for coming, and those that are walking in, please have a seat, and we'll get started. At this time, I'd like to recognize we got several council on LCG, council people that are here. We'd like to recognize Ms. Nanette Cook and Mr. Pat Lewis here from Lafayette Consolidated Government Districts 4 and 7. No, 3. District 4 is here, but 3 and 7. Thank y'all for coming. Appreciate it. At this time, I'll turn it over to our council person who has, as chair, was working on putting a committee together to look at the funding source and the needs. And him and I have been working with this, as well as Kenneth and Bruce and fellow council members. We knew that this was coming to a head, and I want to commend Jay for grabbing it and putting this summit together, and want to thank our staff, Veronica and Joseph, for all the hard work helping get this event here tonight. And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Castile.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. First of all, I want to thank Charles Bazeron from Scott, who was at a COD meeting one night having this discussion, and he's the one who came up with the summit idea, and it was a great idea. So we appreciate you for that, and we're going to go ahead and push forward with it. Okay, I'm going to read my prepared speech, then we're going to get into it. Okay, I want to welcome everyone. We encourage your participation. This meeting is open to the public. Following comments and presentations by the committee members, who consist of me, I'm the team leader, Council Chairman Kevin Nakant, Councilmember Kenneth Boudreau, and Councilmember Bruce Cohn. Next, municipal and school board representatives will be acknowledged for brief comments, suggestions, and/or recommendations, followed by recognition of each of the parish taxing entities for the same purpose. Lastly, if any citizen wishes to address the committee with comments or suggestions or recommendations, then please fill out a request to speak form provided at the entrance. This form must be filled out and submitted prior to the call or the comments from the public, or you will not be given an opportunity to speak. Council Clerk Ms. Veronica Williams will recognize the citizen speakers in order by which the speaker forms were submitted. In an effort to allow everyone an opportunity to be heard, a 3-minute rule will be in effect for the summit. 3-minute rule will be in effect.
Mr. Brasso.
Let me make sure you got that.
Mr. Brasso, that was for you. Spike put that in there for you.
Okay, a speaker shall refrain from debating personal attacks and from making confrontational and derogatory comments. In the event a speaker has completed their comments prior to expiration of their allotted time, any remaining time shall be forfeited. No additional time will be granted. If you have materials you wish to submit to the committee, please give those to Ms. Veronica Williams. Additionally, should any citizen wish to submit written suggestions rather than be recognized to speak in this open forum, suggestion forms are also located at the entrance, along with a suggestion box to submit your completed form. On the other hand, should you instead wish to submit any suggestions electronically, then please email your comments to bclafayette@lafayette.gov. Council staff will compile these written suggestions for review by committee at a later date. Lastly, food and drinks not allowed in theater. All phones and electronic devices shall be silenced from this point forward. I'm moving, item number 8 will be combined with public comments. So now, that's over. Now we can take off. All right. The purpose of this meeting was to get all the elected officials in the parish together. Tonight, we're not a city of Carencro, Broussard, Scott, Youngsville, Dusson, or Lafayette. Tonight, you're a parish representative. You're a parish resident. Our issues within our parish budget is in dire need. You're going to see a presentation tonight by Mr. Comp. He's going to explain to you what's happening, what's been going on, and where we're at today, and what's going to happen if we don't take care of our issues. We put this together. Actually, we've been talking about something like this for 3 years. Chairman Knockham put together a committee. We discussed a lot of these issues. Then I put this committee together, and we had some more discussion in depth. So we've been doing this for a while. We visited all the cities, made their council meetings, discussed the issues, had some public input. So this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone, because we talk about it at our meetings every other Tuesday night. So it's out there and it's been out there. And I want to thank the public, from the public who's here tonight. Hopefully you've got some suggestions and comments that you want to give. We're not going to debate anything tonight. No debates. If it heads that direction, then I'll shut you down. We're here for recommendations and suggestions. We as a council are not going to make any suggestions or recommendations tonight. We want to hear from you guys. Everybody's tired of hearing us. We want to hear from you guys. We want some fresh ears, fresh ideas, and fresh eyes. We want to hear them. Everything you say tonight is going to be recorded. We're going to write it all down. We're going to gather all the information up, put it together, and we'll see how it falls out. But there are issues that need to be addressed, and once you run through this slideshow, then you'll understand why we are doing this. We're kind of at the end of our rope right now, as far as the parish budget. So at this time, I would like Mr. Kenneth Boudreaux to get up, and he can come give you all a few words of wisdom, which he's good at. Mr. Boudreaux.
Thank you, Jay. Actually, I just want to share a couple of things. First of all, as Jay indicated, to those members of the public who are here, thank you for being here. Thank you for coming out. There's been a few little, I guess, sidebars taking place and a little concern expressed about the fact that you would anticipate the majority of the people who are associated with some government entity or some board that's impacted by these funding issues. But I just want to say remain encouraged, because the fact that we have in fact gathered here today is going to allow us to progress further than we ever had. And hopefully we can become a more unified parish front as it relates to these issues that we're facing. So I first want to say remain encouraged, but I want to thank those from the public who are here. Then I want to thank those servants, those members who have been appointed, elected, or selected, as we say in church sometimes, to serve. And I thank you for being here. Another sidebar, someone said, I don't know of the last time that so many parish-wide officials have been in one place, some meeting for the first time. So I think that is a good thing in itself. Just to put things in perspective without being repetitive, actually, Jay, it's been about 4 years. When the last time Councilman Nakane served as chair in 2014, he started a needs evaluations committee. And ever since then, it has been continuing. I was chairman in 15, Jay was in 16, I was chair again in 17, and each year, I think we've given a little bit greater level of attention to these funding issues, which has landed us here today. As Jay indicated, we have visited every municipality. We have spent time with every board or parish entity that is again impacted by this, and know that we have already received some feedback. When we visited your communities, there were some of your residents and some of your constituents in your towns, in your schools, who have already sent in some information that we have already gathered, and I think that was important to make known as well. So today we just continue to progress forward in a unified front, trying to gather those ideas to address these needs that we have all come to recognize. And if there's one objective that we would like to leave here with today, is that we could find the things that we can all agree on. Therefore, whatever action is chosen, that it will be involved with and everyone here and beyond would participate. A lot of the initiatives that people bring forward sometimes meet opposition, but I'm hoping that this one time that we could identify some initiative, some plan that we could all be in agreement on. Therefore, regardless of what body is speaking, that everyone has an appreciation for this funding need. So again, thank everyone for being here. I appreciate you for coming out. I thank this leadership, but I thank all of this leadership that's sitting out here, and looking forward to a great evening tonight. Thank you.
Told you it was good. Okay, we're gonna move into the presentation that was put together by Mr. Conk, Bruce Conk. Bruce has worked on this thing tirelessly. I got emails at 11 o'clock at night, dinging. Think he'd go be sleeping. Old like you, you think he'd be sleeping, but he's not. He's working. So we appreciate you, Bruce. Don't stop working.
You're welcome, sir.
All right, Bruce.
Good evening, everyone. It's interesting that when we began this evaluation, we were focusing on our concerns about a shortfall in property taxes. But as we drilled much deeper into the parish budget, especially during the last 4 months, it's become evident that we have as serious a crisis in the general fund as we do in the projected shortfalls of the parish property tax. So the presentation you're going to see tonight has actually been updated over the months, and even since the copies that we sent to you via email a couple of weeks ago. What a team, huh? It's interesting that when we put together this team, we did so out of a recognition that this was a parish-wide issue and that we all serve on a city parish council. When we came up with the team, Kevin and Jay represent the rural sections of Lafayette Parish, while Kenneth and I represent the city constituents within our city parish council. And some of this is redundant from previous presentations, but I think it's important that we revisit some of the data and the information that we've gathered. For example, Lafayette Parish property taxes. A lot of people will tell you they think we're overtaxed. But when you look at 64 parishes in the state of Louisiana, Lafayette Parish ranks 50th. Now, if you notice that those that have a higher property tax base than we do in Lafayette Parish, you can consider those, for the most part, progressive parishes. They have invested in themselves and they continue to do so. These are the Lafayette Parish property taxing bodies. Please note to the left, those governing agencies that are not part of Lafayette Consolidated Government. And please note at the bottom, the total tax millage that's assessed by those agencies, 65.38. On the right side are the dedicated use taxes for Lafayette Consolidated Government. They total about 22 mills. And the point being is that when you look at the percentage of the property taxes that are collected in the parish of Lafayette, only 28% goes to Lafayette Consolidated Government. It's a common misconception that we got lots of money because of all the taxes that we collect. Lafayette Consolidated Government only gets 28%. The school board gets 39, the sheriff gets 19, and the remainder is broken down in smaller percentages amongst various bodies. When you look at the Lafayette Consolidated Government use of property taxes in relation to the overall property taxes collected in Lafayette Parish, this is the breakdown. Of most concern and top of mind today is how much are we dedicating to storm water management in Lafayette Parish. Only 5.5% of the total property taxes that you pay in Lafayette Parish go toward that purpose. And this was only recently increased with the approval of the voters to rededicate some monies that had been going to what we consider to be the public health property tax. So we have actually increased to 5.5% based on the recent dedication, while the health and mosquito and animal property tax went down to 6.5%. I went into the budget for the current fiscal year, and our fiscal year begins on November 1. The current one began in 2017, and these are based on actual numbers from our budget. And at the time, in her budget message, Lori Toops, our CFO, is focused on some major funds pro forma. And it's interesting to see when, in terms of a fund balance. And I think when you look at a fund balance, the best analogy would be a savings account. You're doing your household budget, you're spending more than you're taking in, you have a little bit in your savings account, so you dip into it to cover the deficit. And that's what a fund balance does for our government. In roads and bridges, we are projecting a deficit this year of almost $3 million. So what we have done, we have gone into our fund balance, which existed at the beginning of the fiscal year, and we have covered that deficit. Well, that's fine for the current fiscal year. We are expecting and anticipating a continued decline in revenues, and of course, expenses will remain, if not grow, in demands. So the fund balance for the end of this fiscal year is actually projected to be only $516 million. So when you look at the numbers there, you can only have one conclusion. We're going to have to make some adjustments in the budget. When you look at drainage and maintenance, even though we have rededicated some taxes, the previous $7.5 million that was available for drainage purposes is now only $10 million. We have been told by the former Public Works Director that we have $80 million in backlog for drainage purposes in Lafayette Parish. That's over 660 miles of drainage channels that we have to do operations and maintenance on. And when you look at the drainage maintenance budget projections, we are in the hole, $1.8 million. We're covering it with a fund balance, which began at 2.3. We'd end up the year maybe with 515. So moving forward, again, the indication is we're going to have to make some adjustments. Revenues are going to be down, and we'll look at that in a second, but the expectations of the public remain the same. They want their potholes repaired, they want their ditches dug, and they want water to flow. The general fund, and this is what I mentioned earlier, first we were looking at the property taxes, but as we got into it, the general fund is causing some major concerns for us now. We are covering a deficit of almost $1 million with a fund balance of just over $1 million. So we began this year with a total of $92,000 in our fund balance. $92,000. That doesn't even allow us to run the Parish of Lafayette for 30 days. In fact, much less. So we're going to look a little bit more at the general fund, because it's an issue that we haven't really addressed recently, but based on the first 4 months of the current budget, we have some serious concerns. So what has happened to Lafayette Parish property tax revenues? We estimated an increase of 2% for the current fiscal year. In actuality, we're bringing in 0.8%. So right off the bat, we are collecting less than we expected. I can't overemphasize or overstate what are property taxes. Property taxes are dedicated for a specific purpose in Lafayette Parish, and that dedication is approved by the voters of Lafayette. They cannot be used for any other source of funding. And I know you'll hear talk, there's been conversation. The library, the claim is they got plenty of money in reserve. They need it. But just because there's some money there doesn't mean that we can take it and put it into drainage. Because she has a dedicated resource, as does drainage. So you can't mix those monies. And the other issue that comes into play, and we've been very emphatic tonight, we are looking at the Parish of Lafayette. You cannot use, even though we're in a consolidated form of government, you cannot use City of Lafayette monies in a parish. No. Prohibited by law. So when you're looking at the bottom line, we are facing an inadequate long-term ability to provide some very basic parish government operations which our constituents expect. Let's take a look at the general fund. This is new. These are numbers that have come in recently that are causing a great deal of concern within the administration and of this evaluation committee. We began the fiscal year of 17-18 with a little over $1 million, and we are covering a deficit, so we're expecting that we're going to drop down to 92,000. And as you move forward into a pro forma for the next 2 fiscal years, it drops down to 81 and 80 respectively. Here's the area of concern about the general fund. We started out the year thinking we'd have 92. We've hit a couple of bumps in the road since the budget was approved. I'm not being overly dramatic, but I'm going to tell you that we are at a 0 point. We're going to have to make some adjustments to correct the budget. We hit some unexpected circumstances that not only cut the revenue, but the economy is down, annexation is taking its effect. So we're going to have to look at the general fund just as closely as we have the property tax. One of the issues that come into play is that our sales tax for Lafayette Parish, which is the majority source of revenue for the general fund, that along with the general alimony tax, is only for the unincorporated area of Lafayette Parish. Looking at this chart, you can see that of the 9% in sales taxes that are charged for every $1 of purchases in the unincorporated area of Lafayette Parish, this is how it breaks down. Of concern is that the parish general fund only gets 11 cents on every dollar. The sheriff gets the same thing, the school system gets 22%, and the state is getting 56%. Of course, they're still operating on that so-called temporary tax, now going into the 3rd year. So again, people think that we collect this money and we get it for our Lafayette consolidated government functions. We don't. 28% of property taxes and only 11% of sales taxes collected in the unincorporated area. Here's what's happening to the sales tax collections for Lafayette Parish. These are the numbers for the last 4 fiscal years. The trend historically is on the downturn. It's not getting any better. We looked at the numbers for November, December, January, and February, year to date. We are down $420,000 from the projected budget. We're going to have to make it somehow. We're going to have to make up for that somewhere and somehow. It's a major concern. It's just the biggest issue today as the property tax issue. So why do we have this crisis in the sales tax collection? Well, one simple explanation is the fact that they're in the unincorporated area, and if there's a new retail business that opens up in that unincorporated area, municipalities, to their credit, are very quick to grab and annex. City of Lafayette does it, every other municipality does it. What happens is that when it's annexed, the parish of Lafayette loses that source of income from sales tax revenue. That is one reason for the decline that we have experienced in recent years. The other is we have a downturn in the economy. And that's the impact is showing up there. So those are two issues, one of which we really don't have any control. Well, actually, both of them we don't have control. But they contribute to the shortfall we're experiencing in the sales tax. Again, property tax revenues are less than projected. We have increasing demands, and we certainly have increasing expectations from our constituency that we are elected to serve. We're also not covering some very basic needs that everyone who lives in a municipality expects and receives, such as rural fire protection. There are about 70,000 people who live in the unincorporated area who do not have adequate fire protection. Those are issues that we have to address. And of course, recreation and parks. The city of Lafayette has a property tax. The parish of Lafayette does not. There are some things about which we can do little, but I think that we should make note that every homeowner in Lafayette Parish, the parish of Lafayette, is entitled to homestead exemption. That is established by the state legislature. It is not accomplished locally. So out of every property tax assessment, the first $75,000 is exempted. I asked our assessor, Conrad Como, to run me some numbers because I had never really looked at it in those terms. Overall, for the parish of Lafayette, with the property tax homestead exemption in place, we are not collecting almost $33 million. Now, I'm not going to stand up here and be politically naive and commit political suicide and tell you we should lower or do away with homestead exemption. But it's something that should be of concern. We are at this moment the highest in the USA. And we have to remain vigilant every time the state legislature meets that we address any efforts to increase that homestead exemption. Because keep in mind, we do not have a control over that. And the irony that comes into play is while they are generous with granting exemptions, it doesn't impact the state of Louisiana, which doesn't have a property tax. It only impacts us. Another area that has just come into play in the last year are property tax exemptions for businesses. We are experiencing an opportunity which did not exist in the past, and the school board's going to have the same thing, and the airport commission. Governor Edwards last year issued an executive order that said that for every proposed or every application that is made for a property tax exemption in a parish must receive the consent of the parish governing body impacted. This is new. In the past, there have been occasions where property tax exemptions were granted, and we were not even aware that that had been done. On Tuesday's agenda for the Lafayette City Parish Council, we have a request for a property tax exemption, and we're going to debate it. And I've already asked for some numbers. How much will we not collect because of this property tax exemption? And those are some conversations that every governing body has to have. Property staff exemptions that will not generate any additional revenues, but will it generate more jobs? Will it generate more payroll? We have to have some serious conversations. So that's something that's new, and we're going to face it for the first time on Tuesday. So, wrapping up, we have a funding crisis. We have a budget crisis. Decreasing revenue, increasing demands. We will be making some budget adjustments, probably at midterm. We don't have the latest numbers on our 17 budget because it's still in process, but to give you an idea of the critical situation, when we finished the 2016 audit report, the parish of Lafayette had only 22 days of operating funds. It's not going to be any brighter on our final audit for 2017. A couple of quick notes. We are putting on the ballot April 28th, renewal of 2 parish taxes. They are expiring at the end of the year. One is for the library, 1.61 mils, bringing in a little over 3.6 million. And the juvenile detention center, which is 1.17, bringing in a little over 2.6. These are parish taxes. Their life is 10 years and is expiring at the end of this year. Now, historically, until last year, we haven't had a problem with renewing property taxes. Last year, we faced a crisis. The first time we went up for a renewal of some taxes, it was rejected by the voters. State law does allow us to come back 6 months later and try again. And we're very fortunate that the voters saw the need for a continuation of those taxes. We are hoping to avoid that situation this time around. So please put the word out. April 28th, it's on the ballot for the 2 parish taxes. And if you're in the city of Lafayette, there will also be a couple of city property taxes. So that's where we are. A lot of more updated information. The picture has not gotten any better over the last year or so that we've been meeting. And that's why tonight we adopted the theme that this is a budget summit. Originally we were going to call it Property Tax Summit. This is a budget summit for the Parish of Lafayette. We need some input. We don't need to be told the problem. We know what's the problem. We need some answers, some suggestions, some recommendations so we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. I need to exercise. I guess that was funny, man. You caught that one. Thought you were sleeping. Okay, I want to make something clear before we start getting into the suggestions and recommendations. We are not here to raise anyone's taxes. We're not here to ask for an increase in taxes. And I hope the news media catches that. I hope they put that out there. And I hope the people in this room understand that. We're not asking for that. We're asking for solutions to the issues. You guys tell us what you think would help. Simple as that. So the discussion tonight will be recommendations, suggestions, not debates on any of this. So I'm going to start with, let me see here. Okay, we're going to go to the city of Broussard, and they're represented by Ray Bork, and their mayor is Charles Longanay, and he's not here tonight. So Ray, you're going to be the representative for Broussard. If you don't mind, Ray, you can go ahead and any recommendations, the suggestions that you had that that y'all discussed as far as for helping out what's going on here, we'd appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And thank you for putting me first. I appreciate it. I would like to say that was an excellent presentation. Very, very good job, very informative, and some of the questions I had were answered during the presentation. But I do have another question. At what point did the budget crisis hit critical mass? I understand that we've had a downturn in our economy. Broussard has faced the same downturn, and we've had to face it in different ways. But was there a point in the last 5 years, 10 years, where the budget scenario was working? Because I think part of solving the problem is identifying exactly when things turn south. So I don't know if you're prepared to answer that, but it's what I would be looking for in that scenario if I was on the committee.
Right.
Do you
well,
know?
we can kind of touch it. It's as such. It's gonna be a broad answer because
Okay.
it's been going on for a while now. Like Mr. Boudreaux said, we started this 4 years ago and we realized that it was getting serious. So if I had to put a timeline, I would go 6, 8 years that it's been creeping up, and now it's reached at that point.
So it was longer than, it started before the downturn in our local economy.
Yes.
Yes, and then when we did have a downturn, it got worse. Okay.
Right.
And that makes sense.
Basically,
Yeah.
the parish budget has been suffering since consolidation.
Yeah.
Okay.
The problem was, and Bruce identified that, is that the general fund was healthy enough to cover those shortages with no officials willing to go to the people and say these shortages are here and we need to do something. So what we've done historically as a local government, as a consolidated government, is just kept covering the annual shortages with fund balance.
Right.
And we're out. So to answer your question, There is some data that will show the parish has been on a downturn since consolidation. The reasons were identified: combination of losing potential retailers through annexation of all cities involved, something that everyone has experienced, and that is economic deficiencies, meaning, you know, our economy is suffering.
Correct.
In those types of factors, but it's been a while.
Well, and Mr. Conk mentioned that.
And Ray, if I may just very quickly,
Sure.
be very clear about this. The parish issues are not because of consolidation. They existed prior to consolidation. In fact, the general fund balance prior to consolidation for the parish of Lafayette is just about where it is today.
Understood. And you mentioned the general fund balance and how it looks like from the chart you showed has been slowly draining. So at one time, the fund balance was healthy. And over the last 10 years, maybe, before the downturn in the economy, it started to wane and go down, and now it's just not keeping up. Thank you for answering that. The only suggestions I can make is, as you know, we do not collect property tax in Broussard, a city property tax. The parish collects their tax. So when we look to raise our own tax revenues, we look at ways to stimulate our own economy. And we're looking at those now for our future. And the next suggestion I would make is tied into that. We're looking at, many of the local municipalities are investing in sports complexes. You mentioned that there's some shortfall in the parish recreational budget. It seems like there's some overlap there because of the things that Karen Crow has done, I believe Scott has done, but certainly Youngsville and Broussard in spending money to increase our own city's recreational opportunities, that possibly the things that the parish is doing is now overlapping into the city. It's one area that you could look at. I'm certainly not an expert on that, you guys would be, but that would be my only suggestion at this time. Okay?
Ray, we received a memo from your legal department, and it touched on possibly gaming devices and others. Is that something that should remain part of the record? It was not stated here today. Should that still remain a consideration? I know you all get hit hard, the fact that right outside of your city limit, which becomes St. Martin Parish,
That's
that
right.
a lot of revenue is leaving your town to go there. Is that something that should remain part of the record, or should that be taken away?
I would say this, that if the voters wanted to bring back gaming into Lafayette Parish, then it's a good choice. But that's a decision that must be left up to the voters. But certainly, St. Martinville Parish has gaming there, and I know there's revenue that they're collecting because some of Broussard is in St. Martinville Parish, so I see that on some of our reports.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ray. Okay, next we're going to move to the city of Carencro, and that's represented by Mayor Brasso and City Manager Don Chauvin.
I'll be brief since I was threatened with a 3-minute.
Everybody knows you.
I don't know. First, I want to commend not only you guys, but the Consolidated Council in total for trying to come up with answers. I'm at a loss. I don't have answers, but you know, there's a misconception, especially in today's world with social media, that the general public doesn't believe that they don't trust government, and they think that everything will be fine, that we're holding back on them. And you know, how do you get those people? I don't think they want to hear the truth. And how do you get those people to the table to show them in black and white what the problems are? You know, you just touch on fire protection. The municipalities are bankrolling the majority of that parish response. You know, and it's hard to say we're not going to respond outside our city limits because, you know, it's our family and friends. But at a certain point, I think something's gonna have to happen, but I don't have any answers. I don't know how we convince the public that we have a financial crisis.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Chauvin?
Thank you, Jay. I didn't think I'd be speaking tonight, so thank you especially for that.
You're in the front row, dude.
Yeah, I see that. Thank you, Council, for your presentation and your hard work so far. When I'm faced with a situation that's new and that I've never seen before, I often think that somebody must have faced this prior to me, and why reinvent the wheel? Let me go and see what's out there, and then try to put my own spin on it and make it work for the situation I'm facing. I would start there, but watching this presentation, it's hard not to notice the millage rates, and nobody wants to suggest it, but I'll say it, that there's obviously something to do with that. If we're down at 50, for a municipality, a parish of this size, with this kind of influence, that has to be on the table.
Thank you, Mr. Chauvin. Next, we have the City of Dusson. Mr. Mayor Johnny Thibodeau.
Thank you, Mr. Castile. Again, I'd like to thank the committee for all the hours and all the effort that they put into this, and thank Mr. Bruce Cox for this excellent presentation. Naturally, I don't think that one person has the answer to this problem, but it's going to have to be a team effort. United we can stand, and divided we're going to fall. And Ray made the comments about gaming. We were very fortunate in Dusson when they voted gaming out of Lafayette Parish, because we also annexed some land in Acadia Parish. And I'm here to tell you that without the gaming revenue, Dusson would be insolvent. That's all I'm going to say. But it's going to have to be a team effort to attack this situation. It's not one individual or whatever. It's going to have to be all of us working together to attack this situation. Again, thank you for the great work. Mr. Bruce, thank you for the presentation. Did we get a copy of that so that we can? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. We're gonna go to Lafayette Consolidated Government's representatives. Lord tried to get away with that. Y'all see that? He tried to pass that mic off. He's quick. And he's not an elected official. Boy, soon to be, I bet you.
Thank you, Jay.
Okay, CEO Lowell Douillon and CFO Laurie Toops, you represent the LCG.
Well, first off, Bruce, that was really very informative, I'm sure. I mean, I see these figures all the time. Very accurate, very to the point. Suggestions, wow. And, I'm gonna hold off right now. I mean, I've got a list right here of my budgetary items that I want to go through, and but it's pretty detailed. I really don't know. I see what's happening. I think that we may have to look at the charter and ultimately redo the charter. I just don't see I don't see a solution right now. But I've got some interesting budgetary items that we may be able to go a little bit further.
That's doing all the money, or lack of.
Good evening. Thanks for calling this tonight. In my 20-something years experience, this is probably one of the first times that I have been in a room with all the elected officials who have something at stake in the parish general fund, from the judges to the district attorney, the school board members, and all the various cities. And that's what we need. That's the only thing I can recommend, is that we need the input of all these folks to come up with a solution. I don't have the solution, but I'm here to listen. The mayor sent me here tonight to listen to the input of everybody. But I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for getting us all together. It's very important.
Thank you, Laurie. Now we move to the Lafayette Parish School Board. School Board Member Eric.
Yeah, it's close enough. Kinesic.
Got it.
So I have to admit, I came here thinking that I was going to have the opportunity to ask you guys for money. So, but the reality is, we all know that there is no local government. Government in itself is funded by tax revenue, right? We don't have primarily by tax revenue. We don't have very many other options for revenue. Certainly, if gaming is an option, we should explore that. When you're 50th in the state for property tax revenue, then you should, and I think it takes courage to educate the public that if you're 50th in line, right, then you should expect your services to be in line with being 50th in the state. You get what you pay for. And to say that we're not here, I don't see how you solve the problem without taxes. I mean, and it's whether no matter your political affiliation, there is no such thing there is no revenue fairy. We're not going to overcome the shortcomings in your budget, the shortcomings in our budget, without additional revenue. We failed abysmally trying to get a tax revenue, increased tax revenue for schools. 1 in 5 classrooms is temporary in Lafayette Parish, and temporary by the mean like 2-3 decades old temporary. I honestly was going to come here and tell you that I needed $2.5 million to pay for school security, because in today's society, even though the revenue is decreasing, the requirements are increasing, just like for you. I think everyone in the room would admit we need a police officer in every school. It is not our charter or mission to protect and serve at the school system, right? Yet you don't have the money, nor do the city governments have the money to provide additional officers in schools. So all that being said, I feel it. I feel your pain. We have to have the political courage to admit when we don't have enough to provide the services. And if we're not going to do that, then we need to educate the public and say, hey, you get what you pay for. You get what you pay for. If you're 50th in the state, expect your services to be in line with 50th in the state.
And now we have Ms. Mary Morrison.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the council and Bruce for this excellent presentation. I learned a few things, and I really appreciate that. I want to piggyback off of what Eric said. I feel basically the same way. You get what you pay for, and as a community, maybe we can work harder to convince our constituents that you get what you pay for. And with drainage and our schools and security, I think that everyone has a good budget and we're spending the money wisely. I really believe that. But there's nothing left. And after there's nothing left, then what do? So we have to go to the public and ask them for assistance. Let them know you get what you pay for. If you want more, you're gonna have to help us. And I would think of it, if everyone gives a little bit, just like the tax we had on the ballot for the facilities. And I think it was going to cost everyone maybe $5 over every $100. I think we have, trust issues, and people just don't really understand what we do. We really have to go out and really explain to the public what we're facing, why we're facing it, and that we really need their help. And that is challenging, but that's my suggestion, to look further into looking at how we can convince our public to support us. Thank you.
Okay, next we're going to move on down to the city of Scott, represented by Mayor Pro Tem Jan Scott Richard and Councilman LaTroy Bajeron.
Thank you. I'll be short, and I'll defer most of it to Troy, but I want to commend everybody for getting here, because I believe at the COG meeting when we first brought it up, open dialogue was the most important thing that we were trying to bring to the table. So the fact that we're all in a room discussing the problem and trying to figure out solutions is the first step. And I think this is going to be a legacy that we're going to look back in 20 years and really thank ourselves for starting this. So I'm kind of like Donnie. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. I think we probably need to look at maybe just starting with a clean slate, looking at what the priorities are from, what's prioritized, what we have to do and what we have to spend and what we have to provide. And then from there, see what remaining funds we have to do what we need to do to provide the services we want to provide. And another thing, I think, piggybacking what Lowell said, I'm not sure how effective the charter is. I don't know if it's effective at all, and I think that's something we may need to really look at in depth. So, but thank you again for your time.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. A big thank you to our leadership for coming to the kitchen table, if you will, as a family to deal with the situation, right? To stop kicking the can down the road. Being this on the end of the line, we're sort of repeating ourselves a little bit, but I would like to share a few notes that I jotted down. A suggestion is to conduct a basic, fundamental wants and needs analysis. That critical component is part of the financial planning process. Once established, the next step is to conservatively estimate all sources of income. Acknowledging the income and expense relationship clearly presents itself in a way that allows for discretionary income expenditures to be applied to the wants, if any exist at all. A quick example of sitting down with a family at the kitchen table is that wants and needs analysis. Let's say dad is in the oil field, energy services, and just recently was laid off. The money's not coming in as it used to. What does that mother and father do as leaders of that family for themselves and their children? This is participatory. What does the mother and father do when their income was just cut in half? Say again? Thank you. Great suggestion. They look at expenses. They prioritize needs, absolute needs. Food, clothing, shelter. All others have to be cut. Is that not a fact? Now, what happens if mom finds out she's laid off? No money coming in. Well, our particular parish, I don't think we're quite in that situation because we do have sources of income. Property millage, sales tax, maybe some fees and a few permits here and there. We have funds coming in. We're in a desperate, dire situation. We absolutely, positively, as a mother and father, if you will, as leaders of this particular community, we must make hard decisions. We have a great time in South Louisiana here in the Lafayette Parish. We enjoy a lot of good times, and we spend some money on those good times. But some of those good times are wants. And I'm sure after this evening we can create, whether we do it arbitrarily and just come up with what are the exact needs of cities in the parish, we could come up with what the very specific and clear needs are, and then the wants, or we can just go down the budget line item by line item and specifically, clearly designate, is this an absolute need? Or does it maybe fall under the want category? It's well known that drainage, the flow of water, knows no city boundaries. Well, folks, tonight, we are a family. We are a parish. We live together. We should have no boundaries in solving our problems. Again, I want to thank the city councilmen to come together and put this on tonight. But my answer, I guess part of my solution, is to look at the line items one at a time and start making some changes from there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we're gonna move, but before we move, I wanna recognize Ms. Liz Webb-Hebert just walked in, District 8, Lafayette Consolidated Council. Welcome, Liz. Now we're gonna move to City of Youngsville with Councilmember Ken Stansberry and Chief Ricky Boudreaux.
Good evening, Jay, Council. Thank you, Bruce, for the nice presentation. It's really refreshing to see a couple months ago when y'all came to Youngsville. It was just very refreshing to come to our council meeting, and thank y'all for doing that. And putting this together, having all the leaders in the same room. I agree with everyone on that. I mean, this was some great input already. I know it was some of it was kind of vague, but getting everybody, I don't think we're going to solve it overnight. But I agree with Troy right here when he was talking about looking at each department. You know, before we go and ask for a tax, in my opinion, we need to make sure that there is no other option of cutting. You know, and Councilman Ray Borg down there was talking about some overlap potentially in the rec department. I mean, we have these other municipalities doing things. Is there a way that we can all work together on this, where our kids can play each other all around the parish? Even though we're doing something in Youngsville, is there still that opportunity? Plus, we have parks that are outside of the city that's being paid for by city money. Is there something that can be done there? So I think, you know, again, going down, looking at the balance sheet would help too. I looked at the budget, and it's pretty lengthy, but without income, and I would love to see the balance sheet to be able to have some extra suggestions for y'all. But that's all I have. Thank y'all again for doing this.
We in the law enforcement community deal with laws changing on a regular basis. Maybe it's time, if we were a consolidated government, that we lobby legislature to make it a true consolidated government where it's fair across the board, city and parish. So, I mean, we deal with it all the time in law enforcement where it's constantly changing. Maybe that's time for that law to change.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, that's everyone in the front row. Before I get to the other agencies, if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this and any suggestions, please come and fill the card out so we can hear you tonight, if you don't mind. The card down here, Ms. Veronica will get it for you. I need to make a comment after hearing everybody speaking. I've been doing this over 10 years, and when we talk about going down the budget, line item by line item, making cuts, doing what we have to do, making it lean as possible. When I sat as a councilman for the first time after 8 years, and I had to cut 2 agencies that I've never dreamed I'd have to cut. When I got to tell a judge that I'm cutting his budget, or the district attorney, I got to cut his budget, or the jail, that I got to cut their budget. That really showed me that we are in serious trouble. And we talked about going down wants and needs, good suggestion. I can assure you this council does that every budget when it comes to the parish budget. We scrutinize that budget. I think Lori, at the end of the day, she just pulls her hair out. It's tough. We do that, and if we go back again this year, midterm, we're gonna do it again, and we're gonna watch this budget again. But you've seen the results up here, and it's not a pretty picture. So give me some more suggestions of what's a possibility we can do, if you don't mind.
Jay, I was gonna ask Bruce to pull up the slide, if he could, of the things that in consolidated government that we are responsible for on the parish side, because it's a good point, gentlemen. And someone talked about the trust in government, and I think it's throughout, even among government. And it's hard to deliver that message sometimes, to just say, look, trust me, We've done all we can do. Jay talked about what happened as it relates to the judiciary, the district attorney, the judges. The cuts have been made. Bridges have been closed. They have gone unrepaired. Roads have gone unfixed, and you've heard those complaints continue. So I just want you to, when you get your packet, I want to put emphasis so that as you review it, you know, a lot of people call it fluff, pork, and those types of things. There is none. And just to let you know the preparation we have made, it has already been concluded at the end of this process. The next stage is layoff of people and the shutdown of services. That is right there in front of us. That is the only thing that has yet to happen, okay? Then when you couple that with what is being projected with this next census count, and if the numbers don't come in right, and if we start losing services, people talking about losing congressional seats, but census determines a lot of things. Judiciary seats we could lose other things, and it's gonna impact services. So we are open, but the only thing we haven't done yet is layoff a field position. But I could also get you the numbers of positions that was vacant, that was either eliminated from the budget or still remain unfilled today. So there has been some significant cuts, and I really, really want everybody to know that when you leave here, that there is no fluff, there is no pork, there is no extra. We've been utilizing what has been available, which goes back to Ray's question, and it has been depleted over time. But look at this closely when you do, and we could maybe gather some numbers about the number of bridges that remain closed today and bridges that we did not act on because funding was not available, overlay requests that went unanswered because the money to do those things, whether it was on the capital side or the operational side. The parks thing, we could talk about that, certainly. It's very minimal because there is no funding for parks. Okay, so there's very minimal spending for parks in the parish area. Scott has kind of taken over the park, okay, and operated. Broussard, Youngsville, this building in doing their thing. Karen Crow has a very closely consolidated program. I can tell you the parks numbers are gonna be minimal. So, but I appreciate that question, but I wanted to just say cuts have been made and positions have been eliminated, and more is coming. And that's the warning sign, because if someone, and of course that'll be an administrative thing at that point, but if some folks have to be sent home, that's the next step. And services we talk about, you get what you pay for, that's we right at that point. This is what you said you're willing to pay for. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Mr. Boudreau. You know, we bring this to you guys, not just to do it, just to say, look, we need some help. What can y'all do? This is serious business. It really is serious. And it's not just about the unincorporated areas of this parish. I need to make sure everybody understands that we're not talking about just the unincorporated areas of the parish. We're talking about everybody, every city in this parish. There's everything that we're fixing to talk about affects you, just like everything we just talked about affects you. If you live in another city, whether it be Lafayette or wherever. So this next group of speakers, they also affect you personally. Again, first we're going to go back, we're going to go by and talk to Mr. Stephen Piku with the Airport Commission. Here you go, Steve.
Good evening. I was thinking it's always bad to start after Councilman Boudreau because he's just a hard act to follow. But then this affects everyone. Yes, the airport. Thank you for the opportunity to come out. And the airport does service the region, and we are a regional airport, and we do affect everyone. Some of the things is, you know, the millage. We kind of were thinking, what are we going to be asked here tonight? And our millage is that we need to keep our millage where it's at due to the fact that we have a new terminal that's getting ready to come online. It's coming out of the ground in a couple of months. We're going to have some big announcements. But what we're doing at the airport is we're continuing to look for other avenues for revenue so we can decrease our dependence on that millage at later dates. But we're not there yet. It is a work in progress. When the new building comes online, we will be able to tell what kind of resources it's going to require. Right now, our millage is only used for operations and maintenance at the airport to maintain a safe environment for our aircraft to operate. So, but thank you again for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Okay. The next one, we're gonna go ahead and give it to our tax assessor.
Mike is dying.
Is dying? That's because he's getting ready to pass down to Conrad. He's full of good news. And next speaker, Assessor Conrad Como, our tax assessor.
What I'm saying tonight pertains to not only LCG, but a lot of the other governing bodies here as well. There are two main takeaways tonight. The first is this: look around, smell the flowers, and pull the weeds. Look around, smell the flowers, and pull the weeds. What am I talking about? We need to wake up in this parish, pay attention, and take action when things affect our property tax base. What am I talking about? 4 years ago, we had what I call the Costco fiasco. That came through here, and I was the only public official in this room to stand up publicly and fight that project. And I wasn't fighting for me. I was fighting for $400,000 for the school board loss for 11 years, LCG $250,000 for 11 years, and the sheriff $200,000 for 11 years. That's what I was fighting for. Last year in the legislature, this bill comes up. Economic development people said it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's called cooperative endeavor agreements. Sounds great. They made it sugar-coated. They said it's another tool in your toolbox. What they forgot to tell you is that it was a sword, and it cuts both ways. It cuts both ways. It was to give local government the opportunity to let's make a deal with business on their property taxes. Oh my God, haven't we given enough in the last 100 years to businesses? Given away. Yes, we're 50th in all categories that matter, or 49th, depending on which one you're looking at, whether it's health, education, whatever. Yet we're number one in the country for corporate giveaways. Number one. Who was the only body in this state that stood up for the taxpayers? The Assessors Association, and we killed a bill, and all of your organizations were in favor of it. It's horrible legislation. They've come back to the table. Guess what? Just yesterday in Ways and Means, 15 bills that directly affected local government. 14 dealt with those cooperative agreements, endeavor agreements. Assessors are again fighting it. Some of the associations decided, whoa, wait a minute. After thinking about it, they backed off their support, and they're just watching what happens. So I'm telling you, please get involved. If our legislators only hear from me, it doesn't have the same impact as if 5 or 6 others in this room are also calling them and say, hey, this is bad business. Number 2, zero-based budgeting. What is that? Deloitte put out a white paper. Zero-based budgeting is budgeting process that allocates funding based on program efficiency and necessity rather than budget history. As opposed to traditional budgeting, no item is automatically included in the next budget. In 2008, corporate America had to go to this because of what was happening in corporate America at the time with the downturn in the economy. It's a painful process, and I am not recommending that LCG go through the entire process. The underlying principles, however, absolutely, absolutely. allocates funding based on program efficiency and necessity. What are the necessities? Emergency services, dealing with crime, fire, healthcare, roads, bridges, drainage, utilities. That's it. Those are the necessities in parish government. Past that, it's wants. It's wants. And that includes recreation. And I know that's a hard pill for a lot of people in here to swallow, but that's including recreation. That's a want. Because when it comes right down to it, you think somebody wants their house flooding? Or you think they want recreation? You think they want good roads? That's the point. You have to go through the list and get back to zero-based budgeting. And then, when that happens, and you allocate all these to their specific areas, then you see what's left. For the life of me, I can't understand why we keep renewing millages at the same levels every single time, when courthouse and jail, for instance, is $1 million deficit, and yet we put them on the ballot at the same revenues, at the same level. We have to address those kinds of issues. When you do that, then you have three options. You cut the service, just as Mr. Boudreaux was saying. You right-size the millage, or you add a new revenue stream. Those are the choices. Those are my comments.
Okay, Mr. Boudreaux, yes, sir.
On the millage, I just want to ask Conrad, on the millage issue, for instance, when we say for the life of us, we don't know why we put them on the ballot at the same. We know why. Because no one wants to tell the taxpayers we're going to increase it. And then you see what the school board goes through. Poor St. Landry Parish, I was feeling sorry for Lafayette Parish. You see it, so nobody wants to do it. So, in zero-based budget, and I'm sitting here, you brought up recreation, and that would be one example about it. People want to eliminate recreation, so be it. But beyond that, I don't know of anything that falls into that category that we do that doesn't have a direct funding, going back to the slide that Bruce showed, where dedicated millage based on what people have decided, not what the governing body has decided. So I like it. I like the zero base, but I don't know if there's much that's available there. And like I said, the recreation component is so minimal for the unincorporated and Parish of Lafayette. But as it relates to the millage increases, and I appreciate, I forgot who said it, I think Eric might have mentioned, I think Jay's comments about we are not here to ask for a tax was because the minute you say that four-letter curse word, everybody gets in an uproar. So no, we're not here, but you're absolutely correct. If you're 50 and no one has the courage to increase a millage when it's at renewal time, but we're at a point now we don't know we could get a renewal at the same level. So I see what's going to happen. My time is limited. But they're going to have some major cuts and some layoffs, and maybe that might make someone up. But when I say, I can tell you that, yeah, I'm one of those folks who bring them in, we try to get them at max, okay? And we get, criticized and ridiculed for that, trying to just capture as much as we can. But the idea of saying, look, there's $1 million shortfall in the courthouse complex, therefore we want to increase this millage. Talking about gun laws, we'll all get shot. Okay? All get shot. That's just the reality. And what I don't want to do is leave here, not talking about the elephant in the room. And I'm not talking about me because I'm the biggest person here. I'm talking about that real elephant that the revenues aren't there, but we want to continue to do the same things we've always done. That don't work. I think that's the definition of ignorance.
Thank you, Mr. Boudreaux. We're going to now move to Bayou Vermilion District. David Sherby is the CEO.
Thank you, Councilman Castillo. Thank you, everybody, for bringing us here this evening. I think this is a great step forward. The last time I was in this room was to talk about the regional drainage projects that were the hazard mitigation grant project, the $25 million that is being dispersed. And I want to thank the gentleman from Scott also for stealing my thunder by saying the water does not know where the parish line begins and starts. And I think that's the type of spirit that we have to approach this problem with, because one thing we've noticed in the flood which of course did affect our tax base also. I don't think that anybody mentioned that, but it had a major effect on our economy that I think we've kind of forgot to mention. But the Bayou Vermilion District, we also bring in the quality that we're looking for also here in Lafayette Parish. We have, we just finished our Vermilion Voyage. We're trying to bring in tourism. We brought people in from all around not all around the country. We started bringing in people to generate funds also. Bayou Vermilion District, we clean up the bayou, but also we operate Vermilionville, which is a major tourist attraction. I mean, we get a lot of attention. We bring in funds into the parish. We pay our sales taxes also. So the Bayou Vermilion District also generates funds. And tourism being part of our, very important part of diversifying our tax base. But to the point of where we have to pull together, we have to realize that what we found out through the process is that it was something that one parish, and I'm not going to name anybody, was having an adverse effect on another parish. Because like we said, we don't know what the water does. But I think we have to get together to realize that with one municipality or the city parish government or the consolidated or the full consolidated government we have, as some people have called it, how that is affecting this tsunami effect. So I think that's how we have to look at this problem. We have to look at it the same way we've been looking at the flood of August 2016. This is something that's coming, and we can't stop it unless we take action right now. And I think we all have to pull together to understand it's going to take a concerted effort. You know, it's not just the city of Scott, it's not just the city of Dussault or anybody. It's all of us together because we all live in this parish. And I think we all want to continue living in this parish. And we have to make things livable. We have to provide the services. And the Bayou Vermilion District, of course, I think just like everybody else, even though we're the smallest, we're only 1%, so don't take our money, because you can't fix our problem with just what we get, but we give a lot back to the parish. But I'm really excited to see that we're finally sitting down and talking like adults all together. We're saying we have real problems here. Our checkbook balance is going down. We ought to continue still living here, right? Continue this great Cajun and Creole tradition we have here. Make everybody proud of living here in South Louisiana. But it's not about, put our head in the sand and say this is, it'll fix itself. It's not. And who's responsible for fixing it? Us here in this room right here tonight. So thank you everybody for bringing us together, and continue the dialogue, and look forward to working on this problem, which is it's a serious problem. I'm glad I'm sorry it got to this point, but it's like the flood. We had to have the flood first to figure out, we got a drainage problem in this region. And it's not just Lafayette Parish, it's not just St. Martin Parish, it's not just St. Landry Parish, it's all of us together. And that's how we have to look at this problem here for Lafayette Parish itself.
Thank you, sir. Just a little clarification. We're not here to take anybody's money. Okay? Just understand that. Okay, we're going next to the courthouse complex. We've got Judge David Blanchette. Want to speak?
I'm going to speak on both the court and a little bit about the courthouse complex, but Louis Perret, our clerk, will speak more about it. I can tell you when critical mass happened for us. In May of 2016, when the council defunded 1/3 of our employees. 1/3 of our employees were defunded mid-year with no notice. That's what we're all looking at here, folks. You talk about scramble, you talk about worry. We are a co-equal branch of government. There is a constitutional mandate for the parish to fund the court system. There is no property tax that funds the court system. We are purely funded on sales tax. So when the sales tax crashed, we got hit and the DA got hit. We know what it feels like. We know what's coming. And you all gonna feel it too. And basically what's happened here, and I went and I looked at the law since I'm a judge. And in 1970, the 1-cent sales tax was passed, except for inside of a municipality. So that's why every time an annex happens, we lose that 1 penny. So basically, parish government, since 1970, has sat by while the municipalities annexed, became enriched, and the parish got poorer. There are 2 other statutes on the books that allowed Lafayette Parish to put up additional 1-cent sales tax, 2 different 1-cent sales tax that don't have that same requirement. But no one has exercised that ordinance putting it before the public. It was put once, but not as a replacement tax, but as an additional tax. Now, there is an overall limit to which you can charge sales taxes, but the point I want to make here is that we cannot continue to allow the sales tax base to shrink and the cities and municipalities to become enriched. The court system serves the entire parish. We don't just serve Lafayette. The courthouse is for all of the people in the parish. The courthouse is not a Lafayette courthouse. It is a Lafayette parish courthouse. Now, I'm all for progress. I'm a city of Lafayette resident, but we cannot continue to allow this to happen. And the municipalities and the parish needs to get together on this. And I want to point out, it's really, I want you to think about conflicts of interest. We hear so much about that, in our national politics. But I want you to think about the irreconcilable conflict that Lafayette consolidated government has. Because every time the city of Lafayette annexes a piece of the parish, it defunds the parish budget. That is an irreconcilable conflict. That is a government designed to fail, right? So there are some charter issues, but there is a tax issue. And it cannot be that the parish loses its sales tax base at the enrichment of the cities. So what do? We could do what some other parishes have done. I did a little more digging around, and you've got some parishes that have gotten together, and for instance, St. Tammany Parish, they have a growth management and revenue sharing agreement where all the municipalities got together with the parish government, and they decided when there would be an annexation, how would the tax be divided in a fair manner between the cities and the parish government. We could do that here. I think that's a great idea. I don't want to hurt cities from growing, but I certainly don't want to have the parish defunded. East Baton Rouge Parish, they went to the legislature. They have a tax that covers not just the parish government, but every municipality in the parish. That again says how these things are going to be divvied up. That's what we need to do here. We cannot sit around and allow the parish government to be defunded. We are a co-equal branch of government. We are constitutionally mandated to be funded by parish government. Now, parish government does not pay judicial salaries. The state pays us. But our employees are paid by the parish. We cannot operate without employees. A judge cannot speak to a member of the public because that's before them. You can't speak to one party without the other party there. I can't see people at my door. They're involved in cases. They want to talk to me about their case. I can't do that. If I don't have a secretary, I can't operate. If I don't have a law clerk, I can't operate. We have 13 judges going through 3 parishes, 8 from this parish. We are all over the place all the time, every day, every week. Let me tell you what's going to happen. Just so you know how much money we burn through, about $750,000 of court funds. It's not limitless either. The parish gives us about $1.6 million a year. I'm not talking about the courthouse tax. I'm not talking about the courthouse. I'm talking about court operations. We were cut $400,000 in 2016, 2017 fiscal year. Less so last year, thankfully. Appreciate that. But I can see what's coming next year. So we are going to run out of court funds. What are we going to do? We got to operate a court system. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to sue. We're going to sue because we're a constitutional priority. Drainage is not a constitutional priority. Recreation is not a constitutional priority, nor are roads. Now, if it's a dedicated tax, of course not. But from the general fund, you're going to pay the court first, you're going to pay the DA first. And nobody's going to have roads, recreation, or drainage. Do we want to do that? Of course not. But we have to have an operating court system. We'll have criminals on the streets, people's constitutional rights will be deprived. You won't have your right to a speedy trial. You know, I was at a meeting downtown. Well, do y'all ran this meeting about downtown? And Department of Corrections, you know, we have this justice reformation legislation that passed, so they're releasing a lot of people from Angola and the other correctional facilities. And what we learned is they put them on a bus and they bring them to downtown Lafayette and they drop them off. If you listed your last address as Lafayette, you're dropped off in downtown Lafayette. If we find ourselves in that position, is the sheriff going to have a bus? If you're from Youngsville, we're going to drop the criminal off there. We're going to drop them off in Scott. I know this sounds crazy, but if we don't have an operating court system, you're going to have criminals walking the streets. You're going to have chaos. And so, not all of you have felt it yet. I have felt it. The district attorney has felt it, and it does not feel very good. But that's what's coming, folks. And we can't cut our way out of this. And if you think that we spent $750,000 of court funds because we wanted to just not cut anybody, you're absolutely wrong. We are to the bone. This is what we require for our operations. We've raised what court costs we can. And by the way, we can't fine people to raise revenues. A court system that does that is unconstitutional. That's like a speed trap in a small town to raise revenues. We can't do that. You can't assess fees to operate your court. That is called a conflicted court. That is unconstitutional. I realize I'm very passionate about this. I apologize for that. But you all need to understand the gravity of the situation that we are facing here. We have no dedicated tax solutions. Okay. I talked about the municipalities getting together, some legislation. I still believe, and I said this 2 years ago to the council, that the parish paying 42% of administration costs in LCG does not make sense to me. You will never lead me to understand how 42% is equitable for the parish to pay for all of the administrative personnel. What do you operate in the parish? Seriously. You don't operate the courts. You don't operate the assessor's office, the DA, the sheriff, some road crews and some drainage. But the parish pays 42% of LCG? Time allocation, there's no way time allocation you're spending 42% of your time on parish stuff. Maybe right now with this, but not heretofore. So I don't think there's an equitable division of that. I don't know how it was calculated. Somebody's going to have to explain that to me to make me understand. So I think that is an area where we have some issues. Property taxes are more stable. We would love to have a dedicated property tax for our court, but that's not there. And so we are left to the vagaries of sales tax, the least stable tax there is. And with the volatility that we have today in our economy, we are in dire need. We are in big trouble here. Courthouse complex, I just want to touch on it very briefly. It generates $5.1 million a year. $4 million of it is sent to the jail. We don't know who makes that calculation. We don't know what it's spent on. I'm not in any way denigrating the sheriff. That's how it was when I got here. That's how it still is. I asked how the money was being spent at the jail. Was it being used on capital outlay? Because that's what I think that tax is for. Nobody could tell me. They were starting to look into it. That was about 6 months ago. Maybe they know now. We have no say in how the money's spent. We have the worst courthouse in South Louisiana. It is antiquated. It is unsafe. It is non-functional. It is a disgrace for a wealthy parish like Lafayette, Louisiana, to have a worse courthouse than St. Martinville, St. Landry, Acadia Parish, and Vermilion Parish. It's a disgrace. And it cannot continue. We are going to eventually have something occur there where it's going to cause someone serious harm or death. And the facility is in dire need of being replaced are upgraded at a minimum right now. It's extremely dangerous. There's no intercom system, so that if there's a shooter on site, there's no way to warn anybody. We can't say code red, nothing like that. The courtrooms, most of them have glass. So if someone wrestles a gun away from a prisoner and we got a shelter in place, we have glass. So I got a courtroom full of people. We could lock the guy out, but it's glass. So I got a bunch of sitting ducks there. We got prisoners coming from all over the state with people that are not necessarily the best trained. Of course, it's not a soft target, it's a hard target, but we have criminals and we have people guarding criminals with guns. And if a prisoner wrestles a gun away from one of the guards, we got someone in a courthouse that's a shooter. And we got nowhere to shelter our people. We don't have any holding cells. Prisoners ride the public elevators. Prisoners are marched down the middle of the hallway of the courthouse in chains, and people have to be pushed to the side. That's what we deal with. I'm not talking about things for the judges. We are paid, the judges, let me just tell you something about judges. We are nothing without our support staff, okay? We cannot operate, we cannot function without support staff. And support staff is paid for by parish government. So we cannot cut our way out of this. Something needs to happen. The last thing, trust me on this, the last thing that judges want to do is sue parish government. But if we have to maintain the civil rights of our citizens by doing so and we are left with no choice, we will do that. We will do that. I think that would be a horrific waste of money and an embarrassment to everyone in this room if we allow things to get to that degree here. So, look, I just want to make it real frank. A judge and judges cannot advocate for a tax or this or that. Everything I've said here is a suggestion. What we advocate is a sufficiently and adequately funded court system, jail, district attorney's office, and clerk's office. That's all we're advocating for. We can't do it. We are subjected to the revenues that you get and the money that you supply to us, but this is an extremely serious situation. I cannot stress it enough. So I would be happy anytime, any place, anywhere. I'll show anybody our budget. I told that to the council 2 years ago. I did everything I told them I was going to do. I'm no longer the chief judge. Judge Fitzgerald behind me has taken over, and he and I are working together on all of these things going forward. But we know what it is. We know what's coming. We've already felt it. When the rest of this parish feels it, it's going to be a really sad thing. So we offer ourselves in any way, in any capacity that can be helpful within the bounds of legal ethics. And again, I appreciate you all having us here tonight. It's nice to see all of the different folks here. I'm not pleased, I hope the municipalities aren't thinking I'm just dogging on them, but it's the tax structure and it's what has been there. But it's something that's not serving us any longer, so it needs to be addressed in an appropriate way. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Now we're going to move. Hang on one second.
I think that presentation kind of shows the cuts that was referenced earlier and some of the things that have had to be done, and I appreciate, you know, like you said, they've experienced it. Everybody hasn't, but they have. On the formula, and I think for total transparency, people here need to know that he referenced about the 42% of coverage that the parish has. That was based on a number of factors. And I could tell you that with representation on the council, whose major interest is the Parish of Lafayette, this was under the previous administration. It was debated significantly whether it was based on time, whether it was based on work request, or any other factor. But this is the reality. The parish can't pay the bill. The actual numbers are, the city pays about 78% of the cost. You see, based on the allocation, because auditing required an allocation formula we had to present the allocation. And how do you justify it? You have to have something you could stand behind, whether it was amount of time, whether it's amount of work, whether it was employees through transition and where we are today in consolidation, but they can't pay it. And we're actually covering that cost. So a great acknowledgement by the judge of just another deficiency of what's in place, but I wanted everybody here to understand that's what happens when the parish can't meet its needs. And again, if you don't think these two guys, along with Jared Bellard and William Terrier, wouldn't be jumping up and down, but they've seen it. This isn't about the city of Lafayette. And I guarantee you, they'll tell you right now that wasn't accurate. But that's the reality. The allocation is one thing, but the actual payment is something totally different. So I wanted to share that.
Thank you, sir. Now we're going to move to the clerk of court, Mr. Louis Perret.
Thank you, Chairman Castillo, and everyone for your attendance here tonight. I begin my remarks by noting that of all the mandatorily required by law parish-wide officers, namely the sheriff, district attorney, district judges, assessor, coroner, and clerk of court, only the clerk of court's office is financed by self-generated funds, meaning we do not receive property or sales taxes. The Lafayette Consolidated Government is required, however, to provide a courthouse in good, safe, and working conditions for us. In fact, the clerk's office has provided, just in the last 2 years, over $481,666 in services to the Lafayette Consolidated Government. The problems with funding and maintaining the parish courthouse are directly tied to the lack of funding required to support our 5-story jail. Since the initial tax was passed in 1978 to support a 1-story jail, the money needed to support what is indeed, in fact, a 5-story jail has been inadequate from the very beginning. I will give a brief overview of how we came to where we are tonight and then make specific suggestions on addressing the budget shortfalls that have plagued Lafayette Parish for the past 40 years. In 1978, a millage was passed in Lafayette Parish to build a new 1-story jail. In 1981, the city of Lafayette approached the police jury, or parish government, and agreed to contribute $2 million to add 2 more floors to the yet unbuilt new 1-story jail. In April 1983, the parish government added 2 more floors, yet that unbuilt new jail became a 5-story jail with a 1-story funding. No provisions were made to fund or maintain the 5-story jail with a 1-story millage rate. In 1984, the sheriff's office and a new jail relocated across the street from the courthouse. The same year, the police jury, or the parish government, moved across the street from the courthouse to the new parish government building. In 1984, the clerk of court's office contributed approximately $1 million to renovate the parish courthouse. In 1989, the sheriff contributed $1.5 million to operate the jail. In 1992, the parish government hired the National Institute of Corrections from Longport, Colorado, to study our jail funding problems. 3 key highlights from this study are as follows. Number 1, and I quote, "The entire justice system is currently financed by an incomprehensible and tangled patchwork of special purpose and general revenues flowing into many different agencies." Number 2, there has been an ongoing practice of financing the shortfall of the jail, not from current operations, but from a fund set up in anticipation of future expenditures, something called the Courthouse Complex Fund. Now that fund is depleted, yet we have problems at the courthouse for which there is no money. The money has been transferred to the jail. Over time, as cities have annexed areas, the unincorporated areas of the parish have grown smaller. This report was written in 1992, 26 years ago, yet we remain in the same exact position, robbing the courthouse fund to pay for the jail. Poche and Associates was paid to study the space utilization needs of the courthouse in 1997. In 2001, Poche Pruitt was paid to update the 1997 study. In 2002, architect David Bernard was paid to study and draw plans for a new courthouse. It was estimated at that time in 2002, $24 million for a new courthouse. In 2003, the parish hired Ray DeSarmo to study the needs of the courthouse. His report states, quote, "No doubt in the distant future, Lafayette Parish will require a new courthouse. The needs are obvious, and the growth of Lafayette Parish and the respective workload of the 15th Judicial District Court will only expand." In 2005, Justice Planning, a nationally recognized courthouse building and renovation company, was hired to study the needs of our parish courthouse. They recommended that a new courthouse be built on the old federal courthouse site. In 2005, that estimation of a new courthouse was pegged at $52 million. In 2006, the Lafayette Consolidated Government's Department of Public Works issued a report highlighting the Justice Planning report. Some of the key points are that we have no holding cells in the courthouse. Prisoners, victims of crimes, witnesses to such crimes, family members, judges, court personnel, and the public all ride in the same elevator. There are 11 different access points to our parish courthouse. It is a security nightmare. The Justice Planning estimate from 13 years ago was $52 million for a new courthouse. This price includes zero costs for land acquisition, since LCG already owns the old federal courthouse site. Now the new administration wants to sell the old federal courthouse site for $1. $1. Additionally, in order for this condominium project to work, the plans call for almost $4 million of public money to support this condo project. My first suggestion, which you all asked us to come with tonight, is for future needs, is not to sell this land for $1 and not give $4 million of public dollars to support a new site, to support the condo project without a new site being chosen. We have studied this enough. My second suggestion is to split the courthouse and jail millages completely, as well as right-size the jail millage. When the jail was open, it held 338 prisoners. Today, almost 900 prisoners are housed there daily, all with the millage for a one-story jail. The leadership of this parish needs to tell the public the painful truth. The jail needs more money. You're welcome, Carlos. The leadership of the parish also needs to inform the public that the need to replace our 50-year-old plus parish courthouse. The longer we wait, the longer the delay, the more expensive it will get. Ignoring the problem will not make the courthouse problems go away. My last suggestion is to face the reality that we don't have a recreation tax parish-wide in Lafayette Parish. We need to offer the public that opportunity to support a parish-wide millage for parks and recreation. Revenues are never popular things to support or talk about. If the surrounding cities and towns are allowed to continue to annex taxable land, then the Parish of Lafayette will only get deeper into this hole. Now, I am a city resident, but I own land in the Parish of Lafayette outside of the city that was flooded during the 2016 flood. My property is 1/2 mile away from Cooley Ildacon. The road in front of my property is patchwork, potholed, and substandard. Our Lafayette Consolidated Government is neither consolidated nor functioning. Only by being completely open, above board, and honest with the public can we gain their trust. The government is not trusted right now by the public. Thank you very, very much for the opportunity to speak.
Jay, if I may. Go ahead. Just some clarification regarding the courthouse and the properties involved. The old federal courthouse is not owned by Lafayette Consolidated Government. It has no revenue source, it has no assets. It's owned by the city of Lafayette. and we are talking about a parish courthouse. So I don't want to leave this room with the misunderstanding that the old federal courthouse is readily available. It is owned by the city of Lafayette. And the other issue, the other point I want to make, and Kenneth noted that I was remiss in exactly what you said. We have not adjusted property tax millages that date back prior to our consolidation in 1996. The jail is an excellent example. But, I'm sorry, the courthouse. The other thing is, and Conrad, you perhaps help me on this, one of the areas in which elected officials over the years have not displayed political courage, there's another way of saying it, but that's the polite say, is the general alimony tax. Conrad, how much are we allowed by the Constitution to have in general alimony tax? Is it 5%? 5 mils? Okay, initially, now this is a weird situation. Every property tax that we have in Lafayette Parish, except general alimony, has got to be approved by the voters. That general alimony tax was actually established by the state constitution. But when we have a reassessment, state law puts into play the roll back, the roll forward. Past elected officials, in their wisdom, have actually allowed our general alimony tax to go from 5 mils down to 3.05. And guess what? We cannot bring it back to where it should be. Those are issues that we just have to accept. Those of us in office, and I served on the 2004-2008 council. We did not have political courage. And look what we're facing today. So please understand that a lot of these issues are made based on decisions that were politically expedient. We no longer can do that. We can't afford to do that.
Thank you, Bruce. Let's move to the District Attorney, Mr. Keith Stutz.
Likewise, I want to thank you for giving us all this opportunity to actually sit and eyeball each other, because I think in the past we've been talking about each other behind our backs. So it's good to look at each other. It's good to look at each other. So, but I want to begin by saying this, and I'm not going to parrot what the court and the clerk have discussed. I agree wholeheartedly with everything they say. I do want to question this thought process that I know is in all of our heads. There's no one at fault here. No one in this room is to blame for where we sit and stand today. That should be, I think, accepted by all of us. We're not pointing fingers at each other. I want to tell you, though, there's a saying that the sins of the father are visited on the sons. That's what our situation is today. We are all the sons and daughters of our political fathers. For the past 20 years, this catastrophe has been in the making. For whatever reason, because it's perhaps lack of political courage, we did not, our fathers did not address the issue, did not have that foresight to see that in 2020, the explosion would take place and we would become the embarrassment of the state. We couldn't see that. We have an opportunity to look forward down 20 years to see that it is not worse. We won't be here in 20 years. I won't be here in 20 years. My children, I hope, are. I don't know if you're like my family, but I have 2 daughters, and our percentages in our family are like, I think, the rest of the state. Half of my kids stayed here, went to college, stayed here, and are working and raising a family here. The other half of my 2 children are living in Austin, Texas. Now, believe me, if you want to compare our situation to other areas, we don't even compare to Austin, Texas. They're not coming back. They were educated here. They were paid through TOPS here. The state invested funds in them, and they're not coming back. Perhaps not because so much we are in the state that we are, but because we don't have anything to offer. We don't have anything to compete. Now, when we look at our state and our millage, and look, I am going to be the first public official in this room
to put the gun to my head and commit political suicide. I recommend that you consider and strongly urge raising the millages, increasing the tax base in this state, in this parish, to cover all of the expenses that you know are necessary. We have done everything that I can do to cut expenses. I'll tell you the doomsday budget for me. I've already had to not fill 15 positions. 15 positions were eliminated. And I've made do. I've not filled those 15 positions, though I think I fiscally can, but I don't want to face that proposition of having to lay those 15 people off because I cannot continue. Well, our illustrious, well, let me not be negative, all right? The present proposed state budget is calling for the complete elimination of approximately $500,000 that will come to the DA's office, that should come by state statute to the DA's office to cover some of those salaries. So I'm faced with that possibility, real possibility, because that budget has not been revisited. That is the proposed budget. Now let me assume the worst case scenario, the crash of 2 years from now happens this year. And that all funding that I expect and am mandated from the parish is taken away as well. Well, let me just use the numbers. We are down now to 58 employees in Lafayette. And you might wonder, 58 employees, what do all those people do? 20 of those people are assistant DAs, the rest are staff. And believe me, they are busy all day, all week, every week, all month. In most cases, we've got at least 1 or 2 felony dockets going in Lafayette alone, sometimes 3 felony dockets in a week. And then the other myriad of juvenile, misdemeanor, traffic. It is, I'm going to venture a guess that we probably receive at a year at a time would be about 30,000 filings. 20,000 or a little less in traffic filings, the rest in felony and misdemeanor filings. 30 filings, spread among about 19 assistant DAs and the rest staff. Well, I've done the numbers. If the budget tragedy happens this year, state and in this parish, that staff of 58, which consists of assistant DAs and staff, will be reduced to 15 people. That will be, there of course will be a need for some staff, but I absolutely will need, obviously, to have DAs. Because if I don't have a DA, that person who got arrested will not get processed through the courtroom. So, with the prospect of, and that's my solution to the budget crisis, is to reduce my staff down to 15 employees. And this will be what will happen. We don't have enough ADAs at 10 to have to man all of the murder cases alone we have in Lafayette. We won't have DAs to handle other cases that are equally as serious. Now you might say, well, you know, that doesn't affect me. I've never been involved in, no one in my family has ever been involved in a case that had to involve the DA's office and going to court and seeing justice. Well, yeah, you have. Because every one of us has had somebody throw something at your car, break into your car, steal something from your car, break into your house, commit a battery on one of your children. We all are affected by small crimes. We will not be able to handle it. We're going to have our hands full with handling only those murder cases. So what's going to happen to all those cases? No one will be, we will eventually have to work something out with the mayor's courts in your cities. We'll send you all of those. We'll look for legislation that will help lighten our load, and we'll send you to handle in your mayor's courts those burglaries, those shopliftings, those thefts, those things that are not murders and rapes.
Are you prepared to handle those things? You will handle them in your mayor's courts. You will handle them in your municipal courts. If you convict them in your municipal courts and you need to send them to jail, guess where you'll send them? You'll send them to the correctional center. But guess who will have to pay the sheriff to house those prisoners in the correctional center? Now, does that sound like something any of you want? Of course not. It's absurd. That's not going to happen. I'll be the last one walking out of the courthouse, believe me. We'll all be putting in our time, but this is the point. The logical conclusion of where we are now is that absurd reality. Now, my recommendation is that we accept the sins of our fathers, all of us. Those in the municipalities, those in parish government, those in city government. All of us accept the sins of our fathers, and we seek some way to contribute to the solution of the problem. I think the most important thing I've heard today came from Lowell. And believe me, I've got a brother who's a CPA. I think CPAs, are too focused on lines and columns, rows and columns. But they make sense because it's either right or wrong. It's either black or white. There's no gray area to a CPA. And if the position is that perhaps the charter that began this 20-year race to this point, perhaps it needs to be revisited. Perhaps we need to look at some discussion about consolidation or proper consolidation. Now we're talking about something. Now I'm talking about something that is way above my pay grade. Right? I'm a prosecutor. I know everything about prosecuting, and I work hard at that job. I don't know the first thing. It can't make a recommendation to you about how to fix it on that mass scale. It's going to take brain power. It's going to take creating a body, creating a group that can analyze and make the proper recommendations about how to fix this massive, complicated sharing of responsibility that now the present city and parish have. We have to all commit, and honestly, I'm asking for that from all of us, that we all commit that political suicide and strongly consider we cannot compete being 50th out of 64. We cannot compete. St. Tammany Parish, are they better than we are? Is St. Tammany Parish better than Lafayette? Of course not. Don't be afraid to commit that political suicide. Believe me, last year at this time, the legislature went through a battle over justice reinvestment because last year and probably into this year, we're still ranked #1. We are #1. We are the most incarcerated state in the union. To some of you may be proud of that. We're not. That carries with it a lot of negative things that trickle down into fiscal issues also. The DAs had to take a serious concession, had to make serious concessions to agree to some of the things that were proposed with this notion about changing us from the state with the highest incarceration rate. Some of the DAs did not agree with all of them. I agreed with a lot of them, except when it involves dangerous criminals or personal crimes. We have to make tough decisions if we're going to make some fiscal progress. And that was the start last year. There were a lot of people who, when it comes to re-election, may have this to face. Some of you, all of you, are going to have something to face at your re-election point. And maybe this is it. Maybe this is what sells it to the community. All of us united, everybody united, and that the proper addressing of this problem, not simply for me, I've told you the doomsday expectation of my office. That's not going to happen. But my involvement in the total budget is minuscule. But even that minuscule part of the budget compared to the overall budget is impacting the entire parish. So we all have that. We all have that responsibility. I believe every single one of us, whether you're in Carencro, Dusson, Scott, or Lafayette, or the unincorporated area, we have an equal responsibility to provide for the parish. You know, all too often, and I was at the ceremony yesterday for Marcus Park. Marcus Park is actually it is the first thing, it's the first step for our future. It is going to be the thing that will bring Lafayette to the forefront in the state and perhaps even the country. But even then, you know, anytime there's a discussion about some progress, some large step forward, it's never, you know, the reference is all about, this is about making Lafayette better. Unfortunately, it doesn't carry over to saying it's going to make Lafayette Parish better. It should, it will, but that's what I'm asking all of you to do, is to think in terms of Lafayette Parish, not solely in terms of Carencro and Scott and Lafayette, to think in terms of Lafayette. It may be a serious pill to swallow, it may be political suicide, it may not. It's going to show some progress, it's going to show some forward thinking, some progressive thinking on our parts. You know, as Bruce said, there's a lot of those parishes who are above us or beyond us or higher up than our position at 50th who are in fact progressive. I want to believe we are too. We just haven't matched in our delivery to the public about what the appropriate expectations of the public in paying taxes are. So that's my position. I do want to say this in closing. I've said this before. I have been well known for writing letters that express my true passion and true experience and true positions. And most of those letters, you can tell when I'm actually shouting because it's all in bold print and capitalized. But those days are over. I mean, now I think it's time to get past that. I think it's time now to bite that bullet, to satisfy or confront those sins that our fathers have visited on us so that our children aren't having conferences like this complaining about how we didn't do something 20 years earlier. All right, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Now we're going to move to the Downtown Development Authority. Jeff Dyer, the CEO.
Thank you. Wow, that's three pretty serious acts to follow there. So they're my downtown people too. So bear with me here. The DDA was a redevelopment agency created by the city council back in the 80s to oversee the redevelopment of the asset that is the downtown of our region, downtown Lafayette. And you know, we receive a millage out of our immediate district, you know, pretty modest, and we work hard at redeveloping that asset. A lot of things have changed since the 80s. I think that we've seen nationwide a renaissance in cities, and especially cities our size. We've seen hundreds of millions of dollars go into a lot of cities our size of investment, and that investment, of course, turns into tax dollars and tax revenue. And the other thing that we've also learned in the last few years is when you start to look at tax generation per acre, whether it's property tax or sales tax, downtowns in a region are far and above bigger generators of revenue than anywhere else in the region. And we've done the math and we've seen that that is definitely the case in Lafayette. And the truth is, when you look at it per acre, we run circles around the Walmart and the Olive Garden and, you know, even the Chick-fil-A. You know, we are a revenue generator and we are ultimately a donor in the money that we generate to the rest of the city and the parish. And you know, when you and that's in spite, you know, that's in spite of, you know, buses dropping off criminals in our downtowns. So we're having to deal with those kind of issues, and that's in spite of you know, the parish courthouse that sits right in the middle of our downtown, and we are definitely sympathetic that that situation needs to be fixed, but also that the old federal courthouse, that, by the way, for the last 16 plus years has been a $200,000 per year opportunity cost. So that you do the math, and that's a lot of money that we've seen go by the wayside on that. And that's also, you know, so we've had some things against us, and yet even with that, when you look at when you really put the math together, we are still a net donor to the rest of the region. The other thing that's happening right now is, what bad economy? We have tech companies for the past 3 or 4 years that have been knocking down our doors. They are shoehorning themselves into every possible little nook and cranny into our downtown. We just had a ribbon cutting last week for TIGA, a Lafayette-based tech firm, and they all want to be downtown. And guess what? Also, they want to have their employees to be downtown. They want to attract new talent into our region that creates new tax revenue, and they want them to be close to downtown. And so we have this huge opportunity on our doorstep. And when we look at that opportunity of growing in the next 10 years and what's potential for our housing, we've done the math on that too. And we have seen in the next 10 minutes, in the next 10 years, if we were to realize that opportunity, we could increase the value of our downtown by 175%, which would increase the overall city revenue by 14%, and a big chunk of that for the parish. The downtown is a money maker, and when we're talking about raising revenue, that to me is an obvious one. At the same time, when you look at a lot of the money that we spend on infrastructure on the edge of our city, I think that we have sent the wrong signals to the marketplace that is cheap infrastructure. That is not cheap infrastructure. Most places are complaining about traffic and trying to figure out how to build bigger roads. We're doing that too, but we have this other immediate concern, which is flooding that not everybody else has to deal with. And we have very expensive infrastructure, and it costs a lot of money. And when you go out there to the cheap land to build apartment complexes for people who have to then commute into the downtown to go to their work, that's expensive from one end to the other, and we're not feeding our money maker, which is the downtown. We have markets that want to be down there, and there's no excuse for us not to be looking at the full cost accounting of what we are doing. And so I really commend this committee for taking that deep dive, and I would encourage us to really continue to look really at the full cost accounting. I feel sometimes like when you start to really add things up, and everybody wants to be fiscally conservative, and so we start to do the math. But once you see that the math is it's really expensive to do that, and someone's got to pay the bill, all of a sudden Jiminy Cricket shows up, and we're wishing for wishing for the stars, and the money's not going to come from that. Money has got to come from somewhere, and it may come from, well, I won't even say it, but as a representative of our downtown and the redevelopment, I think that we have our contribution to play if we, as a parish and a city, are willing to put the investments into it. We can help generate money and bring us out of that. And so, again, I commend this committee for continuing on looking at those hard decisions and really continue to make that deep dive. And I look forward to seeing really not just the downtown and the handful of other agencies that are representing or seeing this opportunity, but having everybody come together and help realize the potential and the market and the economic development engine that is the center of our region. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we're going to move to leader, the Lafayette Economic Development Authority, Mr. Willie Leday, Commission member.
Thank you, Mr. Castile. I am the chairman of LEDA, and I have a couple board members here in the back that are assisting me and tap me on the back if I mess up. But it's an honor to be here. I thought the presentation was excellent. I've read in the paper about the parish funding issues, but until you really hear and see this, it really hits home. So I had no idea it was as severe as it is just from reading the newspapers. We typically do not vote as commissioners on this type of an issue, but we met last week and discussed the issues pursuant to Mr. Castile's request, and we came up with 2 recommendations. I will preference the recommendations by saying this. After listening to what everyone had to say today, I think that the recommendations are probably simplistic and will need probably a lot more discussion and may or may not solve the issue. Our first recommendation is to annex the remaining unincorporated areas of the parish and have each municipality take financial responsibility for infrastructure development improvement, maintenance, thereby eliminating parish properties. And the second recommendation is true consolidation. Again, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I commend our council for the excellent work you've done on this issue and educating us on the potential problems that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we're going to move to the Law Enforcement District, the Sheriff's Department. Colonel Carlos Stu.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo, and the council for having this summit. On behalf of Sheriff Gargle, who can't be here, representing the Lafayette Sheriff's Office. Basically, we're in the same situation everyone else is in. In approximately 2000, when the prior administration took office, they had about a $18 million surplus. As of our last audit for the first year in office in 2016, we have a $30 million deficit. You know, think about that. We had 18 million surplus and a 30 million deficit. So that's a flip, give or take 40-something million dollars. So that's the situation that we're in. We're busting at the seams to try to decide what we're gonna do and if we make cuts, where we cut and what we do. And you know, ultimately that's what we're gonna have to do. I mean, we just, this week had to turn down a local municipality that wanted another work crew because we just can't afford to have another deputy in a van along with equipment and inmate workers that we're trying to get qualified to work because DOC is pulling a lot of those qualified inmates from our workforce here in Lafayette. So unfortunately we weren't able to fulfill that obligation and we are looking to possibly do that next year. In continuing, there's just so many different things that we could talk about. In the first year of our administration, we saved approximately $2 million, which we're proud of. However, if we want to get out of that $30 million deficit, we're talking probably 15, 20 years if we could even see that. So that's the situation we're in, and we're trying to decide where we go from here and how we continue to move forward. The location on Willow, I don't know if anyone's ever been out there. It's a beautiful facility. We do a lot of training out there. We have transitional housing. We have workforce inmates that are there, and we also house those inmates there. That building was bonded, and we owe 20 years on that building. We're paying about approximately $1 million a year on that facility. So that's something that we can't get out of, and that's a situation that's reoccurring every year. And out of talking about the jail earlier on, and we talked about the population and how it was built from 1 story and it ended up at 5. Our current jail capacity is 754. We have 586 unsentenced parish inmates right now in the jail, and we have approximately 200 that are located on Willow. This is significant because, you know, of course, the court systems they're busting at the seams, and as we heard, they're dealing with less ADAs and staff members and people to process people through the court system quickly to get them out of our facilities into state facilities. The situation that we're dealing with is that the approximate cost is $60 to $63 a day to house a parish inmate. Okay, so we're looking at approximately $500,000 a year to house parish inmates, and that's only for their clothing and their meals. That's not their medical. That's not their prescriptions. That's not if we have to bring them to the hospital, to the emergency room, if they have to have surgery or anything else. That's just basic costs. And we house 200 on Willow. The 200 we house on Willow, the sheriff assumes all those costs on his own. He gets no parish money for those inmates that are on Willow. We have to subtract out the feeding and medication and everything else, so that parish government is not paying any of the costs, because that's a privately owned facility on Willow that Sheriff Newsom had built and housed inmates there. So that's a cost that's significant to the operation of the sheriff's office. We also go into the services that we provide to the municipalities. Sales tax dollars have really diminished, and we all agreed to that here today, and we talked about that. And in 2002, there was a law enforcement district tax that was passed. At that time, that tax was generating approximately $4 million. Today, that tax is right at about 2.4, 2.8 million, somewhere near that, close to 3 million. So since 2002, since the sales tax dollars have diminished, so has that funding. Aggressive annexation has really, really hurt the sales tax dollars that the sheriff was getting in the unincorporated areas of the parish. When I wore the hat as police chief in Carencro, I was all for annexation, because the more we grow, the more business we take in, the more we flourish in our community. Now that I wear the sheriff hat, I see the difference, and I see the impact that it's had on the operations of the agency. And we simply can't continue to go forward without having some type of resolution, because the services that we provide, just a couple that I thought of just while we're sitting here that affects communities, is the taxing services that we provide. We also provide the daily assistance to other municipalities. We also participate in all the floods, like in Youngsville. You know, there's no way the city of Youngsville could have had the operations that they had without the support of the Lafayette Sheriff's Office and the men and women that helped in time of need, as well as Carencro and the other municipalities. We talked about festivals. You know, every community has a festival. Without the sheriff's office, you can't have a festival. You don't have the amount of deputies available. You can't have a parade. I mean, think about it. Unless you start calling in small towns that have people that are unqualified, not post-certified, that are gonna do something in your community, is gonna cost you millions of dollars in lawsuits. You know, we continue on to talking about community services. We talk about dispatch services, warrants. We dispatch for all the local municipalities, police related calls. They don't have to have dispatchers in their agency. They don't have that manpower necessity, as well as having all of the benefits that they have to pay to have those people employed. We offer crime scene services, metro narcotics, the juvenile assessment center. Our juvenile assessment center is busting at the seams with the amount of kids that are coming into the facility being arrested at the schools and on the street. That's something that was partially funded, or is partially funded, through LCG, but the municipalities bring people and bring these juveniles to this assessment center, and we get no payment from any of these municipalities. That's another area where we continue to have expenses that there's no solution to getting additional funds. Transportation, I mean, I could go on and on a lot of things that we do, but approximately 78% of the taxes generated to support the operations of the sheriff's office are directly going to salaries and benefits for employees and retirees. 78%. That doesn't leave us much to operate outside of those mandated expenses that we have. So in looking at those things, you know, we're looking at alternatives. We're looking at things that we may be able to do differently in areas that we can cut. We may have to start charging for services, or we may have to come up with a solution. I mean, we're like everyone else. We have to cut, you know, a possibility is cutting out the floor of the jail, where we no longer house people on the 5th floor and we lay off employees. If we do that, the repercussion is the parish is going to have to send out inmates elsewhere, and we're going to have to pay the transport and also house them at another facility. Is that beneficial? Then that's even more of a burden on LCG. You know, so we don't want to do one thing to hurt another. But you know, where do we stop, and what do we do? Where do we make cuts, and where do we tell people no, we can't do it anymore? Because the sheriff pretty much is a catch-all everywhere. Well, the sheriff's going to do it. You know, we talked about the downtown development, and what we've identified, the sheriff office has identified that when they leave in Angola, it's common knowledge that they're taken care of in Lafayette, because Catholic Services does a good job taking care of the homeless, and we do a good job, you know, giving them services. Well, when they ask them to get out of Angola, where do you want to go? They say, I want to go to Lafayette, because they take care of us in Lafayette. So that's why we've seen the increase in the homeless population in Lafayette. That's why they're getting a bus ticket from Angola. That's why we have additional sex offenders, and a sex offender registry is continuing to grow in Lafayette, because they're coming here, because we're catering to them. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but we created that, and that's the situation we have to deal with today. So we're tracking that. We've put the state on notice that we're watching, and we're not going to be a dump site for people that are homeless and have nowhere else to go, because eventually we're not going to have the services to provide. And we're facing that now with the agencies that are helping the homeless. But think about it. I hear people talk. What we need to do is we need to put the homeless in jail and lock them up. At $63 a day, do you think that's the most beneficial thing for us to do in Lafayette? Because it's not coming out of the sheriff's pocket. It's coming out of consolidated government's pocket. Because you have to house them, you have to feed them, you have to clothe them, you have to medicate them, and do everything else that goes along with it. So if you think that that's the best solution, I can tell you, and we've already told Lafayette Police Department, the chief is in here, when you're gonna bring someone in and you're gonna book them into jail, we're gonna write a misdemeanor summons and release them. Because we don't have the space to house them, nor is it economically feasible to do it. So that's some of the things we have. I'm sure Sheriff Garber would expand on a lot more. But these are things that we're facing, and we have to make some tough decisions coming forward. And we may have to bring something to the public and to the voters here in the near future to try to help us with the situation we have. And we just ask that all the municipalities try to support us as best that we can so we can continue to provide these services for you at no additional cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. Now we move to the library. Ms. Teresa Elkerson.
Thank you. Just want to point out that the millage that's up there, the 6 point, is actually 3 millages that are combined. The library first started in 1946, and there's always been a millage. It was required by the state that each parish have a millage to support their libraries. That's how that started. They built the main library downtown in 1979 when they opened. It opened in 73, excuse me, or 74. In 79, they ran out of money. They couldn't operate it. They laid off people. It was 6 years of laying off, not buying materials, and they went back to the taxpayers in 1979 and passed another millage to operate the main library. So we operated that library for years and years and years, and it was the only library in the real building. The rest of the municipalities had trailers and old houses where they had a room dedicated to the library. Well, as Lafayette continued to grow, when I moved here, it was still kind of a cow town, and it started growing. Industry was still booming, and they decided they wanted better libraries. And so they went to the voters. I don't know how we got so lucky, but in 2002, they went to the voters, and the voters said, here's your bond money to build your libraries, and we know you have to operate them. We're going to give you another 2 mil to operate your libraries. Great. It's taken us 18 years to build those libraries. We're still building the 5th one in Scott now. We've been collecting the millage to operate these libraries that haven't been built yet. And that money, we've had good times. That money's sitting in there earning interest. That's why we have a little bit of the fund balance. Some of that fund balance is capital projects that have not been spent yet because it takes time to build libraries. But we're the poster child. This millage is actually doing what it's supposed to do. Parish votes it in, and then the council rolls it forward and upward, back and forth to get the right amount of money to operate. That's what a millage is supposed to do. You all are trying to operate on millages from the 60s. I mean, that's a joke. The library couldn't do it. You'd be still in a trailer in Scott, a trailer in Carencro for your library. We've got some of the best libraries in the state. People come from all over the state and the country to view our libraries. We make national news when we pass a millage supporting our libraries. People move here for our libraries. So I'm just saying, thank you, taxpayers. You did it right in 2002, and I don't think there's any reason why Lafayette Parish can't have it all. Drainage, libraries, schools, roads and bridges, downtown. I mean, we could have it all. Everybody would want to move here. That's it.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we're going to move to the Tesh-Vermilion Freshwater District. Alex LaPresto.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo. The Tesh-Vermilion Freshwater District was created way back in the 70s to solve a problem with the Vermilion River. And I don't know how many of you in this room remember the Vermilion River in the 1970s, when it was known as the most polluted river in the United States. Not the state of Louisiana, the United States. And enter the Tesh-Vermilion Freshwater District becomes operational in 1983, and the Bayou Vermilion District, Mr. Jeremy, becomes operational in 1984, and the Vermilion River has been transformed from the most polluted river in the United States to the most valuable natural resource in Lafayette Parish. And I can assure you, gentlemen, that defunding the Teche Vermilion Freshwater District and returning the Vermilion River to 1970 status would be a financial catastrophe for this parish. Never mind the effect it has on recreation, tourism, property values. From what I'm hearing tonight, this parish cannot afford the tens of millions of dollars it's going to cost to upgrade your sewer plants so the treated affluent can meet these stricter standards that EPA and DEQ are going to impose on you to put your affluent into a depleted Vermilion River. That would be a financial catastrophe. So we need to keep the Teche Vermilion Freshwater District functioning. We need to keep Bayou Vermilion District functioning so that we have a vibrant Vermilion River. I don't know if everybody realizes how valuable that is to the parish. I have an observation. That's my observation. I have a recommendation. I would like to encourage the governing bodies, the taxing authorities, to use intergovernmental agreements to promote cooperation between one or more governing bodies or taxing authorities. It can be very productive. Let me give you an example. I represent a large sewage district in Iberia Parish. They needed to build a sewer plant. The city of New Iberia needed a sewer plant. So the city of New Iberia and the sewage district in Iberia Parish enter into an intergovernmental agreement to jointly pool their resources and build a sewer plant. It got built, and it benefits both the sewer district, the parish, and the city. It seems to me that all of the governing bodies and taxing authorities that we have here, when you have something that you need to get done that can be mutually beneficial, the state law allows for intergovernmental agreements to promote cooperation. Teche Vermilion Freshwater District is now in negotiation with the Acadiana Planning Commission on a joint project that will mutually benefit the Acadiana Planning Commission, of which Lafayette Parish is a member, and also benefit the Teche Vermilion Freshwater District. And it's going to be done through intergovernmental agreement, cooperative endeavor agreements. So I would encourage that be considered when you have problems, that when you pull together your cooperation and join together, you can solve the problem. Thank you, Mr. Castillo.
Thank you, sir. Okay, before we go to public comment, everyone had an opportunity to hear everybody's stories, whether they're good stories or bad stories, but you heard it. So there's no surprises when it hits the fan, okay? Everybody understand? Everybody in this room. We're gonna need some courage from everyone, not just like the consolidated government. Everyone's got to stand up and do the right thing on this thing. You heard the judges, DA, the clerk, sheriff, municipalities. I was jotting down notes, and there was a couple suggestions. I would like to have seen more come out, but hopefully y'all can send us some more during the week, or next couple of weeks. But I hope y'all understood the conversation tonight, how critical this is. If you walk out of this room and you think that everybody was blowing smoke up each other's skirt, you should have never came tonight. Wasted my time and everybody else's time. This is a serious, serious issue, and everybody in this room has to deal with it. Not just like the consolidated government. Everybody. It's a parish issue. It needs to be addressed. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and. Wait, Mr. Nakan, you got the floor. You can try.
Well, I just want to say that it was very hard for me to sit back and not say something. Mr. Boudreaux said a lot of things. And Judge Blanchette and Mr. Perret and DA and everybody, Carlos and the mayors. We got to come united. Obviously, everybody has voiced the crisis that we have, and when the solutions are brought to the table and the suggestions come out and LCG does something about it, that it's not a surprise, and that every municipality, every taxing authority, and everybody in the community is gonna have to hold hands and have to get this out to the community. You know, everybody has children here. I have 3 kids. I don't get to see them every night. I take my turns. I love family life. I love Lafayette. I'm a Cajun at heart. And I'm a man that believes in doing the right thing regardless of political party, whether you're Democrat, Independent, Republican. You can throw that out the window as far as I'm concerned. You're either going to invest in this community and you're going to do it right, or you're going to cripple this community. And then your children and grandchildren are not going to be here. I went to the courthouse. I used to say the same thing. I'm a good law-abiding citizen. I never had to go to the courthouse. I went to the courthouse, and I can feel exactly what Judge Blanchette and Mr. Perret and the DA saying. I went in the same elevator with some criminals. Oh, let me back up. They weren't criminals because they weren't tried yet. But was I scared? Yeah, I was. Do I travel, play Cajun music and travel all over the United States and see other cities and see how they function and see Austin, Texas? Yeah. To be 50th, and you have a university right here, and you have your Cajun culture and your heritage and your Creole and your arts and your food, and people travel, people fill the hotel rooms to come to Festival Caguen and Creole to be a part of our culture, and we're ranked 50th. And you're hearing the crisis that we have within the Sheriff's Department, the unincorporated area, fire protection, parks and recreation. You know, it sounds great because Broussard has a new park coming up, Youngsville has a new park, Scott's doing some renovations, Karen Crow's got some things, but all of those people that participate in those parks live in that municipality. We're still forgetting about the folks that live in the unincorporated area, that have a right to play ball, have a right to play basketball, soccer, you name it. So is the municipality going to come in and take in those unincorporated area kids to help the Parks and Recreation? Or are we just going to leave it aside? So the point is, everybody uses the courthouse, everybody uses the Sheriff's Department, everybody uses Parks and Recreation. We want to be 50 in the state and just say, well, we know golf courses are a luxury item. They are. So let's close them. We don't need that. We don't need Parks and Recreation. Close all the centers. Where's our kids going to go? They're going to be on the street. You know, I believe in Lafayette. I believe in this community. I don't want to pay any more than anybody else. Lord knows what I've just been through. I'm happy to have water. But at the end of the day, I believe in if you got to pay to play. And if you want to be proud of your community and represent your area, you got to be willing to step forward and rewrite the wrongs that the people have done before us. I want to be amongst those people that have stood up, gotten punched in the face, gotten ridiculed and criticized because, oh, you stand for more revenue. You call me what you want. At the end of the day, am I doing the right thing? Am I bringing the right solution to the public to try to fix the issue? Yes, I am. Don't vote me in 2020. I don't care. But I'm going to go down fighting and doing what's right. And either we can all stand together, or we can all walk out the room and just wasted another 3 hours tonight away from our families to talk about what we all know is obviously what's needed. So I do apologize too for having a little bit of passion, a little bit of aggravation in me. It's because this council right here for the last 4 years or longer has looked at the budget. We have cut, we have tried. We have gotten sued. We have done everything we possibly can other than come out and just tell you the truth and do what's right. Political suicide, call it what you want. At the end of the day, you've heard from every mayor, you've heard from the taxing body, you've heard from the sheriff, from the judges, to the courthouse, and we're going to hear from the public. If you say no to no revenue, if this community comes out and kills everything that we take in from you and we put out, if the community kills it, and you're saying no to no more revenue, then you're saying you like it is, then you're saying yes to more crime, you're saying yes to more people in the streets, you're saying yes to no parks and recreation. So if you're saying no, you're gonna have to answer to a yes. I don't wanna be that. I wanna go down with you and do what's right for the community and put it out there. We don't pass it, we suggest it, right? We give our community an opportunity to vote for their interests, their community. You live here, you raise kids here, it's your community to invest in it. We either choose to invest in it or we choose not to. But it has to start with you guys giving what you gave tonight, with the community coming together, and whatever this council, or we get together and we bring to the voters, whenever it is. I'm calling every one of y'all that were here tonight. Come in District 1 and come knock on the door with me. It's not about re-election. It's about doing what's right. The popular thing, doing the right thing is also not the popular thing, because nobody wants to hear it. But I sat here long enough. I can't take it anymore. I want to be among the people that are going to make a change for this community so we can all down the road be proud. Because it is a tough decision and it's not fun. And you're going to get punched in the face as a political elected official. You know, I never ran to say I was against taxes or for taxes. I said, as long as it has merit and it has a meaning and it's going to be of value, then I'm going to look at it and I'm going to do what's right. And that's what we're all here to do tonight. We have to do what's right. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm surprised it took you that long. Mr. Cohn.
As we walk out tonight, I don't want to have any confusion over Lafayette Consolidated Government. Lafayette Consolidated Government does not have a source of revenue. It has no assets. When you look at the budget for Lafayette Consolidated Government, which we adopt every year as a consolidated budget, you have the Parish of Lafayette, the City of Lafayette, LUS, our utility system, and LUS Communications. 4 separate budgets. Where Lafayette Consolidated Government comes into play is the administration of the functions of government. The revenue comes in from 4 separate sources. The administration sees to the daily O&M of our governments for the unincorporated area of Lafayette Parish and the City of Lafayette. Am I saying that correctly, Lowell? So please understand, when we start talking about money, Lafayette Consolidated Government does not have a source of revenue, period.
Thank you, Bruce. Mr. Boudreaux, you'd like to say something? All right, we're going to move into public comment. As a reminder, in an effort to allow everyone an opportunity to be heard, the 3-minute rule will be in effect for this summit. Speakers shall refrain from debating, personal attacks, and from making confrontational and derogatory comments. In the event a speaker has completed their comments prior to the expiration of their time, any remaining time shall be forfeited. No additional time will be granted. A reminder that comments should be relative to the suggestions and recommendations on Lafayette Parish revenues. And I believe we have 4 speakers? 5 speakers. Okay. Chairman Knockin will bring you the mic. First speaker, please.
Jacob White.
Jacob White.
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand, Jacob White. Oh, yes.
Stand up. I just had a quick something to add. In fact, let me get this. I have notes. It wasn't brought up, but I feel like it was danced around in a lot of the comments on political courage and the sins of our fathers. An interesting thing that we could at least consider. I don't know that we have any ability to assert regional. Basically, my suggestion is we look at the successes in Colorado, the West Coast, and more dominoes are falling in the medical cannabis arena, and then recreational use of cannabis. And as we all know here in Lafayette, we have approached decriminalization, and there's a certain amount that you can possess where it's it's become civil and it's not a criminal thing. I think it would be an interesting thing to approach, seeing tax revenues increase in areas where this has been tried. And I don't know that legally we could do something like that because it's maybe more of a state issue. But I do know that there's something on the books from '96 where the Louisiana state legislature attempted to pass some form of medical marijuana bill that then I don't think they wrote any kind of regulatory language for, and so I don't know that you can actually use that law, but it would just be something to discuss. And I think at this point, we look in 10 years down the line, these I feel like it's going in one direction, and it would just be maybe something to consider. Anyway, thank y'all.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Steve Oates.
Steve Oates.
Thank you, and I'm here wearing a hat as just a citizen of Lafayette, not representing anybody but myself here. My wife and I don't want to pay any more taxes, just like everybody else, but discussions about cuts, further cuts, discussions about amending the charter, feels like we're moving chairs around on the deck of the Titanic as it's sinking. I've watched hardworking council members cut, stretch, do everything they can. You can find one or two things to cut in any budget, but we're wasting time by talking about that. The charter, Bruce and I served for 2 years talking about the problems with the charter. We'll be talking about that, and the Titanic will have already sunk. We don't have time for that. We're all going to have to give a little bit more, and it's going to be through property taxes. There's no way around it, and we're all going to have to come out unified about it, and we're not going to be able to talk about cuts because that's a distraction. We're not going to be able to talk about the charter. That's a distraction. It's an easy thing to get off the path because we don't want to talk about the hard thing. That's human nature. But we're going to have to raise ad valorem taxes. We're going to have to right size them. We're going to have to pass new ones, and we're all going to have to pay a little bit more. If we don't all pay a little bit more, there are individuals who pay a lot more. The people whose house floods, he's paying a ton. The people who get their daughter or son gets killed by a drunk driver who's a repeat offender who the justice system hadn't had enough resources to take care of, that family pays a lot. If we all pay a little bit more, we can solve this problem. I don't mean to put the DA on the spot, we talked about it, but I propose specifically that we use the power, one of the part of the solution, use the power of the district attorney to put before the people somewhere between 1 and 5 mills. Each mill is going to generate more than $2 million, and we all support it. The DA can't do it alone, the judges can't do it alone, but to deal with public safety. We all know people who, just this week I had a friend in what you would all consider a safe neighborhood having his front door kicked in and beat up and robbed. Public safety, drainage, and our roads, that's not wants, I'm sorry. But we all have to pull together, avoid distractions, and support one.
Time's up, Mr. Oates. That's probably the hardest part of my job, is cut somebody off, especially on the road like that. Next. Rodney Richard.
Nickname Cooney, AKA.
He's a politician and he wants $5 right off the bat.
It's a campaign contribution.
No, look, guys, I really appreciate what's happening here today. Y'all have convinced me almost to vote for new taxes, you know, and I think I can be convinced, and that says a lot. Jay's pointing fingers.
I spent a lot of time with this guy right here, and he was always on the other side, okay?
The but is, I enjoy hearing this. Now I think it's time to put all these solutions from the experts that I'm seeing here and come together as one force. Now, as a contractor for 30 years and in the code enforcement business, there's one thing that I hear over and over again from developers and contractors. I will never come back to Lafayette Parish again. And I say, why? Too much red tape, and it takes too long to get permits. And I'm telling y'all, I understand rules and regulations, but they gotta be a faster process to get these people through the system. Y'all need to look at that. The little towns have a good handle on it. And I don't know, you know, why the little towns have such good handles on processing people through the system versus Lafayette. And I think that's part of the reasoning we're not getting the economic developments that we need in this parish is paperwork. Weeks and weeks of getting permits. 3,000 square foot BVD lab. When I submitted it because I am a contractor, I know the process. When I got back all my review letters, I'm saying, oh my God, I'm gonna have to visit every one of these departments, which is 12 or 14 different departments. We've gotta be a way, I don't have a problem with all those departments, but there's gotta be a way to consolidate things and get the development rocking and rolling in this parish. And that's where I think, you know, we're missing our short live or whatever I'm trying to say here on economic developments. You got to get the people in and out, start swinging a hammer, pouring cement to work our way out of this tax problem. But not in the flood zone. All right. But that's it. That's all I have to say.
Okay, Cooney, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Now, for this man to say what he just said, that takes a lot, because he's at the Chevron station in Carrico every morning, and they get beat up, and we get beat up on a regular basis. Okay. Next speaker, please.
Patty Carter.
Patty Carter.
I just had a few suggestions. Public input needs to be included in all of this dialogue. Whenever the city council or other agencies form a committee, I believe that each one of the city councilmen should be able to appoint a citizen in addition to people that you select on your own to these committees. There's definitely a disconnect between the public and taxing agencies. They don't feel like their money's being spent wisely. And if there was more connection to actual people in the public, citizens, they would understand it better. One of the things I wanted to point out was you're talking about all the millages. Half the public doesn't even know what their general alimony millage goes to. It's really ambiguous. They don't understand, well, I've heard comments, why am I paying alimony? I'm not divorced. You know, it's just, you get all this, really, seriously, you get all these weird comments. That needs to be made public, what you're doing with general alimony and why it's termed that. Just little things like that would make you connect with the public better. Another suggestion I have is all the festivals that we have. Every little town has a festival, but nothing is charged for these festivals. You might have to look at that as charging a fee for even policing, for even all these extra fees that the city and parishes have to absorb. You pay a fee for a bracelet to buy beer, or why can't you pay money for your different facilities that you're using? I know you don't want to charge like Festival International for people to come in. New Orleans charges for all their festivals. So I think that's something that you could address. Also, from time to time, it's been mentioned tolls on roads to help with maintaining the roads that are currently here. I don't know what the DOTD, I don't know any of those regulations, but if you build new roads, such as an interface around the city, you could possibly charge tolls for those. Another thing too, when you're talking about these taxes, it's great that all of these people are here. I'm disappointed more people from the public didn't come tonight. People really need to understand where all the tax money is going, and I don't think you'd get so much pushback on raising millages or adding millages. The public just needs to be more informed. And I don't know if you do it right now or not, because I'm not in that industry, but possibly some kind of taxation on people coming in as tourists, taxes on the hotels, additional taxes or fees. That's just a few suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, Bruce?
Real quick, I don't know the origin of the term general alimony other than the Constitution, but all of those property tax revenues go into the general fund for the parish.
I think people would like to know where general fund monies go.
$92,000, doesn't go very far. I can tell you that right now. Okay, next speaker.
Final speaker, Margaret Lynn Dubois.
Margaret Lynn Dubois.
Thank you very much. We have a lot of problems with taxes. I keep hearing taxes. We all know the public doesn't want taxes, okay? So I have to tell you what I experienced. In 1985 and 90, which is many years ago, I lived in the Woodlands, Texas. And I know y'all are familiar with the Woodlands, Texas and how nice it is. I taught at the middle school, and next door was the junior high, and I lived in the apartment complex next to the junior high. And after school, I could go to the junior high. There was a turnstile, and I could walk through the turnstile, and I could walk around the track. And I'd meet my friends. I'd meet my friends from church and work, and we'd do our exercise. We'd walk around the school track, then we'd go through the turnstile, and we'd leave. Sometimes in the morning, my husband would take care of my daughter, and if I wanted to do extra exercise, I would go, you know, before school, before I went to work, go through the turnstile and walk. So what I'm trying to say, we could combine, I keep hearing Parks and Recreation and, you know, the school board taxes and all that. If we could combine, if we could do a Parks and Recreation tax and a school board tax, and if we could let the public use the facility, use the school grounds some kind of way. Like I live, I could walk to Prairie, I live in that district, but I can't do it. But if there was a turnstile or something, I could go and I could walk. They have a little track thing back there that you can walk, and I wouldn't be walking on the street. Like Lafayette High, there's a lot of aging baby boomers around Lafayette High. We need to exercise. We could go walk the track at Lafayette High. I mean, it could be done with all the security cameras, and maybe they could just walk daylight, you know, not during the dark. But I think if we combine the two, we might have an easier time, and then we'd be using the multi-using the resources. I don't know how the school board feels about that, but the Woodlands was doing this back in the late 80s. I don't know if they're still doing it. I don't know what they're doing now. I haven't been in a few years. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, that's all the speakers. I want Mr. Boudreaux to wrap this up because he's such an eloquent speaker. He like puts all at ease.
I hope I'm known for a little bit more than that, but that I'll take it. Just right quickly, we appreciate all of the input and comments. Although the public isn't as represented as we would have liked to, we have good media coverage. We did have some public, but just the sharing of information is going to be extremely valuable. And our commitment going forward is to produce a document of what happened here tonight. So you'll be receiving the updated version of Councilman Cox's presentation, as well as once all of this information is gathered and organized, you'll receive that as well. Councilman Castile asks that if you have some type of idea driving home, please email. You can email directly to a member or directly to our council staff. Please email the council office. We could provide you with that information on how you could do that today. I want to agree with Steve Oates and I say this with a tremendous amount of respect, at least in this room, let's not simplify this issue. I think the district attorney indicated, and Judge Blanchet, this is a real, huge, very complex issue. And I know there's this thing about trust. All I can do is tell you what I know. That there is no wrongdoing, there is no misappropriation, there is nothing available. And as I was sitting here in the suggestion in Texas, I got friends in Texas, and the beauty about the turnstiles and walking on their tracks is what they pay in taxes. They pay a lot. And their facilities could be maintained, whereas in Lafayette, they have to lock the gates because when the gates or the turnstile, the adult goes with the child with the bike and they tear the track up, then the track isn't usable for track season. So they try to protect the track. But I would love to see the consolidation of services. Recreation and Parks and Lafayette Parish School System share a lot already. You may have heard the announcement we're about to start transporting on a pilot using our municipal bus service to see what impact that will have on transportation. There have been many attempts. The district attorney's office used to provide legal services to Lafayette Parish School System. Okay? And there are some times where some things just can't happen. And we have to believe that every individual who's elected to office is actually going to do the right thing until they do something wrong. But if we go in with no trust and with no thought that they could do what's right, we'll never get off of first base. So I just wanted to share that. I think a lot of great ideas came out of today. I appreciate this process. It's not gonna happen overnight, but I think that we have some things to work with. When we talk about cooperative endeavor agreements and intergovernmental agreements, we see a lot of them. There's a lot taking place, and a lot of things were said here tonight about making the public aware. We always try any new idea to make the public aware, but we also have to have a public who wants to know, not to say no, but who wants to know. I can tell you, we used to do budget hearings at 5:30 in the afternoon, costed us a lot of overtime pay for employees. We moved them to the day because we studied the fact there was an average in the Lafayette Consolidated Government's budget. I've been finance chair 7 times. We average, outside of employees and staffings, we was averaging 3 people at our budget hearings. So we moved them to the day where we wouldn't have to pay overtime and where the staff was available, and then the budget offices could go and work on what was done late into the afternoon. We have to have people who want to know, so we're open. I think it's been good here today. You know, I wish I could just poll everybody, because I've always believed in the ability and the impact of momentum. And I wonder if someone brought something forward, I mean, real and legitimate, and that we could actually see what impact it's gonna have on the parish budget crisis if everybody could get behind it. Not have a single municipality, not have a single agency saying no. We know there's gonna be some individuals saying, but I would really like to see how that looks. If someone brought something forward and you saw it, and you know this is what it's gonna do, and this is the relief it's going to get, if we could all, as officials, get behind it. Because when I started this process, if you remember when we went to your municipality, and particularly you guys, when we started this process, it was about finding things that we could all agree on. And I felt that if something was brought forward where Lafayette, Scott, Carencro, Broussard, Dusson, and Youngsville, the leadership said this is good to their own communities, that the groundswell in that community would be minimized because they wouldn't have to hear it from a Lafayette guy. A Carencro guy would tell Carencro, this is good. A Scott guy is going to tell Scott, this is going to help us. A Broussard guy is going to tell Broussard. I think we're going to need something like that. We're going to need something, whether it's to address the courthouse and the jail, because if we separate them, that's fine. But if we don't put enough money in each pool, we still, despite the phase. So I don't know, that may be the next charge, is to start receiving suggestions based on what we've heard here today. What is the one thing that we could do together that's going to impact the parish budget crisis and fix something and use that as an example? My feeling here today, and this is going to be my closing, when the mayor of Youngsville, who I consider to be a friend, after the flood, went on TV and said that the city of Youngsville is prepared and able to fix its problem, but the parish of Lafayette cannot fix its problem, and that minimizes the ultimate fix of the drainage problem. That's when I realized if we don't do it together, it just don't get done. So we could stay in our silos and get nowhere. Think about that. But again, thank everyone for coming out. Thank the public, those who came out for participating. Thank you to the media. And I have to thank Ed and the AOC family who's gonna make this available to the public. That's some of the public resources we do have. AOC has been here the entire time, and this will be showing as soon as they get their calendar up. Maybe we could put that on our site as well to make people aware of when the replays are going to take place, so Greater Lafayette could view what took place here tonight. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Woodrow. Well, as you can see, that we all, four of us, are pretty passionate about this issue, and my colleagues in the audience, they're pretty passionate also. So we're doing the right thing, and we hope everybody else wants to help do the right thing. So we're going to need each and every one of you to get on board. When this decision is made, we're going to need everyone. That's simple. Because if it doesn't happen, y'all heard it. Y'all heard exactly what's going to take place. So thank y'all for coming. I appreciate y'all. Ran a little bit long, but I want everybody to get their time out. And I appreciate y'all for coming. Thank y'all. Have a good night.